We
Genescu
are
7.
going live, and we are live and on the air.
I
And
like
this
it.
is Ed Dyer, and this is the TWIS Minion Science Island Hangout. Joining me tonight so far, we got Dale Liebrecht up in Saskatoon, Canada, in his workshop, doing
And,
exciting stuff.
and it's not that exciting. I'm just building a box.
Building a box. Okay. And also joining us tonight, we
I've
got
got a box.
yeah, there we go. We got Richard Drumm. And
The astronomy
Richard's
bum.
a big fan of astronomy.
Well,
And,
I'm known on the internet as Richard Drumm, the astronomy bum. So
yeah. And as he was telling us in the before show, you're going to have an astronomy hangout this Saturday?
Yes, Saturday at 3 p.m. It's called the. It's for the what is it? The Weekly Space Hangout crew. WSH crew is going to try to replace the Weekly Space Hangout during its summer hiatus. And so if everything goes well Saturday, then we'll start broadcasting live, like us here now.
That's Saturday in the afternoon, I presume, not Saturday a.m. like it often gets here.
True. 3 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S. Yep.
All right. Pamela Taylor and her lovely daughter Chelsea should be showing up. Pamela just got home. She sent me a message. Has to get set up. We got some really interesting stories. The first one I'm going to wait for Pamela because it deals with ovarian tissue transplant. Now, I don't know, Richard, how much of an expert you are on ovarian tissue, but I don't know a whole heck of a lot about it. So
I've got two kids, so you know.
Got an interesting one. You've had every week there's a story popping up about what did the Neanderthals in.
Yep.
And now we got a story, and we know for sure it was the rabbits. They couldn't catch rabbits, and that's what did them in. Got another interesting story about a synthetic immune organ. Synthetic organ. Got another story. This one talking about a climate change skeptic. That's not new. The story broke around the beginning of this year. But the interesting thing is here, well, okay, you got a guy, and he's published articles, and he didn't bother to mention that he received most of his funding from energy companies. Might be a slight bias there. But also, what this particular article in The Guardian, speaks to is it isn't just him. I mean, he published in journals, and these journals have a responsibility to vet the stories. And he's from Harvard.
Yeah, Harvard CFA.
So Harvard really, they have a responsibility to make sure the guy is full disclosures on these stories, and that's really what this particular article speaks to. We've got an invading fish, a fish invading the waters off Australia. Hopefully Pamela will be here and we can talk about that. I'll jump into the first story, which is about how rabbits killed Neanderthals, or more specifically, how their inability to capture rabbits and other little critters might have done them in. And I'm screen sharing once again so you don't have to look at the top of my head. Now we don't have any pictures of Neanderthals here. Okay. Reading from the article. Wait a minute. Oops. Wrong story. I started reading the ovarian tissue story. That's not what we're going to talk about right now. Here we go. Thinking about the extinction of Neanderthals some 30,000 years ago, which was really not that long ago in terms of the scale of time, rabbits may not be the first thing that spring to mind. But the way rabbits were hunted and eaten rabbits were hunted and eaten by Neanderthals and modern humans, or not, as the case may be, may offer vital clues as to why one species died out but the other flourished. And this is Dr. John Stewart, the associate professor in
ecology.
And environmental
ecology. Yeah.
Paleoecology. And his team, and they analyzed data on rabbit bone remains found in an archaeological excavation in the Iberian Peninsula. They found that while rabbits were a critical part of the human diet, they were relatively underutilized by Neanderthals. The fact that Neanderthals, typically associated with hunting large prey over short distances, were seemingly unable to catch and kill such creatures is compounded by rapid changes in the environment. The climate was changing and the ecology was decreasing in terms of the amount of animals they were able to hunt. If Neanderthals were more tied to these large animals, the loss of them could have driven the Neanderthals to extinction. Evidence that modern humans were more able to hunt across large open spaces and use technological innovations such as twine and traps to help them catch the faster, smaller prey, including rabbits, suggested that they adapted better to this change in surrounding. Modern humans had more that they could do. They had more possibilities and were more able to cope with the deterioration of the climate than Neanderthals were. And if humans thrived when Neanderthals did not, it must mean, well, they say it must mean that modern humans were better at exploiting resources than the environment. And this ability to adapt to shifting temperatures could be pertinent today, with climate change currently threatening to impact human life once more. And I will start there. Stop there.
Yep.
And Pamela is here. Hello, Pamela. Don't know if she's been in the wild parts of Australia. Don't know if they've got rabbits in Australia.
Oh yeah.
Yes, we do. Yeah, we have. Oh my goodness, yeah, we have the rabbit-proof fence.
That's right.
Have you not seen the movie about it?
Yes, got a copy of it.
Rabbit-proof fence? Yeah, we have rabbits. Yeah, they're actually banned in the state where I live currently, and you wouldn't see any. But just over the border, go down an hour south, and they're running all over my university campus. It's really cool. Because they're a pest here, but you can have them as pets, and in some states of Australia. And when I was a kid, I had a pet rabbit.
Oh,
great.
Yeah.
Do people hunt them and eat them? They're delicious. They can be, anyway.
I think some people do. Yeah, I'm not friends with those people though.
Pamela, you're a vegetarian?
Yes.
Strict vegetarian? Did you eat any types of meat?
Not now, no. I haven't eaten any meat since 1987.
Okay. That's interesting, just to address a bit, because I can remember a couple of women who were vegetarians, and when they became pregnant, I think Dr. Kiki might have been one, they switched.
Yeah, they craved meat. Yeah, if I had craved meat, I would have eaten meat. I would eat every fish in the ocean if it meant my daughter was healthy. But I did not crave meat. I craved lemonade, so I drank lots of lemonade, which is terrible. And what else did I crave? Parsley. So I was eating a big bunch of parsley every day. I had in my teeth and everything, really attractive. I craved wood, but I didn't eat any. I just chewed on some toothpicks. Yeah, I didn't crave meat.
Okay.
So I didn't eat any. But some women do, and if they feel that they have to, that's fine. You've got to do whatever. Like when you're pregnant, it's amazing. Your relationship, well, for me anyway, because I'm not a foodie, the relationship with food completely changes. Everything tastes different. Everything smells different. If you're hungry, you can't just go and eat, in half an hour or so. You have to eat then. It comes on like that, and you have to eat right then, and you have to eat whatever you're craving, and yeah. It's really intense.
Eating quickly when you need the food is what this first article I read was talking a little bit about, Neanderthals. No, I know that they had culture.
So I was going to say that the red hair is a Neanderthal gene, isn't it? So
yeah.
I have one right here. I'm just going to mute because she's singing.
That's always been a question: is just how technologically advanced could Neanderthals be? We don't know, obviously. We know that they did make some tools. We know that they buried the dead. They had some kind of culture.
Yep, they did artwork of a sort.
But their environment did change. I guess it changed fairly rapidly for them. And, they didn't need to make things like traps for small animals and twine, perhaps, until that environment changed. Perhaps it changed so rapidly that they may not have had the ability to evolve, perhaps, to the point where they could make tools like a trap for a small animal. Possibility. Certainly, Bugs Bunny can fool most humans, so I figure he could probably fool most Neanderthals as well.
Wascally Webbit.
Hopefully.
My pet rabbit when I was a kid was Bugs Bunny Taylor.
Yeah. What's up, Dr. John Stewart?
I love the Bugs Bunny cartoons.
Yeah.
The next story, and hopefully, Pamela, you can see it in the chat area. You may have already been able to read it. Is about a woman who was able to give birth from ovarian tissue, and when she was young, she was 13. She had to go through chemotherapy, and what they did was they took out her right ovary and they preserved it. And then what they were able to do when she decided she wanted to have kids, they were able to transplant that ovarian tissue, and she was actually able to have a child. So let me read from the story, and let me screen share once again. Okay, and this was an article in The Guardian. It's a young woman in Belgium. She became the first to give birth to a healthy baby after having her fertility restored by a transplant of ovarian tissue that was removed and frozen when she was a child. The 27-year-old patient who asked to remain anonymous, gave birth to a healthy boy in November and was said to be overjoyed, which you can certainly relate to, Pamela, after suffering years of anxiety about her fertility since undergoing chemotherapy as a 13-year-old. Now, her gynecologist, Isabel Demasteria, or something like that, at Erasmus Hospital in Brussels. This was a victory for her, and she was happy after living with that uncertainty for years. It's the only option available for these children, said Dr. Demasteria. It proves that immature tissue can be transplanted in adult patients. Even if you put the tissue in an adult environment, it will be activated. Another person, Dr. Greta Nargund, medical director at Create Fertility, said, "This is a major breakthrough. It's one anecdotal case, but it's immensely exciting. It demonstrates that a natural conception and a healthy baby in a woman who simply would not have had this option until now." Another professor, Evelyn Telfer, a reproductive biologist at the University of Edinburgh, said the results would give other doctors confidence to treat their patients with ovarian samples that were banked during childhood. This is really good news for all the young women who have had tissue stored. The patient was born originally in the Republic of the Congo and had suffered severe sickle cell anemia as a child. After immigrating to Belgium at the age of 11, she was told she needed a bone marrow transplant. The procedure requires the patient's immune system to be disabled using chemotherapy to prevent the donor marrow being rejected, but the treatment can permanently damage the ovaries. Before chemotherapy at the age of 13, the doctors removed her right ovary. She had just entered puberty. She hadn't started having her period. And 10 years later, the woman told the doctor she wanted to have a baby. They grafted 4 fragments of the thawed ovarian tissue onto her remaining ovary. Previously, the same grafting procedure had been shown to work when the ovarian tissue had been taken from an adult, but until now the technique had never been shown to work using immature tissue. The trial showed that the tissue appeared to activate completely normally. The woman started ovulating within 5 months after the graft, and then she conceived naturally without the need for IVF or any other fertility treatments.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to why they didn't freeze both of the ovaries. Or did they need to leave one in as opposed to graft the other one to it, even if it was dead?
Right. It's a good thing they did only one in that case.
No idea.
Yeah. Yep. That's someone calling from my ovaries. Come here, come here. Let's say hello.
I know you were a nurse. I don't know how much you know about the changes that occur regarding ovarian tissue. When a young girl, 9, 10-year-old girl, she reaches puberty. Now, in this particular case, there must be a difference between the ovarian tissue, I'm thinking, must change either through hormones or something, because of the difference they talk about between adult ovarian tissue and an immature ovarian tissue.
Her reproductive system hadn't switched on. I mean, she was 13 and still didn't. She's 13 and she still didn't have her period, which is getting a bit late, really. But yeah. So it must. I don't know enough about it. No, sorry. But yeah, it obviously changes. I mean, your whole body changes when you go through puberty. Everything changes.
So. I wonder if this would work in a girl who was like 9 before puberty.
Sounds like it would.
Yeah, well, this girl hadn't started her period, so yeah.
Oh, it said she had entered puberty, so I was guessing that the fact that she was in puberty made a difference. But once again, I really don't know.
If this is the first time it's been done, I don't think anyone knows the answer to that. They would just give it. Medicine's trial and error, really. We don't know what we're doing. We just get lucky sometimes. Yeah. You'd be scared at how unscientific it can be. So they would just give it a go. They're like, we hope this works. If not, at least we tried. And it worked. So that's fantastic.
Yeah,
so it would take a lot more cases to know the answers to that.
And I don't know that there's any drawback in her case, having her right ovary removed. I mean, women have both ovaries removed during cancer surgery. So it's not a requirement. You can be healthy and not have ovaries.
No, you can't. It brings on the early onset of menopause. Having early menopause can lead to osteoporosis. There are health risks. You don't want to be removing your ovaries for no reason, and yeah, no, it does bad things to your body. Yeah, I know a lady who, she's 51 now. She had a hysterectomy at 24. She had some health issues, but never had children or anything. Yeah, and her body's worse than before. Sometimes she wishes she just died. It's not great. So you only remove it when you have to.
Okay, that's one of the only ways you say remove one ovary.
Yeah, plus you tend to grow a moustache once your ovaries go. Although some women do that with ovaries. So.
See, if I have my ovaries removed, can I have a mustache? Wait a second. I got a Y chromosome. I guess that's not going to work.
Yeah, it's the hormones mix up. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, anybody gets bored from me reading, you can always watch Pamela playing with Chelsea. Be entertained.
I don't know anyone else.
Last night in This Week in Science, Kirsten was amazed by Dale's climb, but she also said, "Oh, there's Pamela and her cute baby Chelsea." So you were on TWIS last night, Pamela.
I did intend on watching. The reason I was out this morning and why I was late is because my laptop died, and I couldn't revive it. So I couldn't watch TWIS yesterday because I had no laptop. And I suppose I could have mucked around on my iPad, but was too cranky at that stage. And so I went out and I bought a Chromebook this morning because that was the cheapest thing available. Yeah, so far so good. So I'm on the Chromebook.
All right. Connection looks good.
It looks good, yeah.
I mean, it's a lot better than we got ourselves a TV engineer over in Canada, and his connection's been lousy for most of at least in the after show. So
the Chromebook is really, as I say, it just works straight out of the box. You just turn it on, log into your Google account, and here I was.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I've got a refurbished iPad, and I don't want to spend a lot of money. So far, it's been terrific, really, and it's, I don't know, at least 4 years old. I don't probably use it as much as you do. I use mostly my PC. I don't know. I'm one of those people who's a little afraid to leave the Apple universe. I mean, everything I got with Apple, I plug it in, it works, I'm good to go. And I'm absolutely sure that there are other, Chrome devices, etc., that are just as good, but I'm having a hard time getting away from Apple. Okay, we got another story talking, in this case, about a synthetic immune organ. A synthetic organ. Let me screen share. Okay, there's a. Wow, we got a picture of some cells and stuff.
Yeah, micrographs.
This is engineers from Cornell University, and they created a functional synthetic immune organ that produces antibodies and can be controlled in the lab, completely separate from a living organism. The engineered organ has implications for everything from rapid production of immune therapies to new frontiers in cancer or infectious disease research. The first of its kind immune organode was created in the lab by Ankur Singh, who's assistant professor of mechanical and aerospace engineering, who applies engineering principles to the study and manipulation of the human immune system. The synthetic organ is bio-inspired by secondary immune organs like lymph nodes or the spleen. It's made with a gelatin-based biomaterials reinforced with nanoparticles and seeded with cells, and it mimics anatomical microenvironment of the lymph node tissue. Like a real organ, the organode converts B cells, which make antibodies that respond to infectious invaders, into germinal centers, which are clusters of B cells that activate, mature, and mutate their antibody genes when the body is under attack. Germinal centers are a site of infection. and are not present in healthy immune organs. The engineers have demonstrated that they can control this immune response in the organ and tune how quickly the B cells proliferate, get activated, and change their antibody types. According to the paper, their 3D organ outperforms existing 2D cultures and can produce B cells up to 100 times faster. The immune organ, organode, made of hydrogel,
there you go,
soft, non-composite biomaterial. The engineers reinforced the material with silicate and nanoparticles to keep the structure from melting at the physiological relevant temperature, which is 98.5 degrees. The organ can lead to increased understanding of B-cell functions, an area of study that typically relies on animal models to observe how the cells develop and mature. What's more, Singh said, the organ can be used to study specific infections and how the body produces antibodies to fight these infections from Ebola to HIV. We can use our system to force the production of immunotherapeutics at much faster rates. Such a system can also be used to test toxic chemicals and environmental factors that contribute to infections in organ malfunctions. Very cool research that sounds like it's going to have some come on, screen share. I'm going to get you, screen share. There we go. Has some practical applications, particularly if you can get away from animal models. That's been kind of a drawback. I mean, you think of all these mouse studies and things. Now, if we can use this technology as a way of getting to human trials, maybe a first stage might be this what do they call it? Organode, going to these organodes. Really get up the research. How do you think, Dale?
Organoid, O-I-D, there's an I in there. Organoid, just like asteroid, organoid. Yeah.
Dale looks like he's pumping something. He's very intense. We will let him stick with this project.
Yeah,
I know how complicated it is to build a box.
The speaker enclosure. What are you doing, Dale?
For the protective equipment I have, I'm just making a little area to store everything in one kind of spot, and I'm really anal. I'm like, when it comes to human behavior, I know myself and most people. If you're working in a shop, if things aren't handy to get at, you tend not to use them in a pinch, right? So things like glove, glasses, ear protection. I have some breathing apparatus for different things. I'm mixing different chemicals and stuff. So I put everything in one area, and I put it in. I always, whenever I build a shop, I put it in the easiest place to get at, so I use it. Because I know myself, I'll cheat, right? It's like, oh, that's going to take me an extra 5 minutes if I have to go and do this, and I'll just do this real quick, and that's when accidents happen. So I'm making little boxes to organize everything so that it's real simple to get at.
So you got chemicals there. Maybe you can mix them and you can blow stuff up. That'll make a fun presentation.
Nothing that exciting. Not that exciting at all. But yeah, I have some chemicals for. I use etchant when I'm making circuit boards. If you've ever made circuit boards before. So you basically put a copper-clad board into a solution, into an etchant solution, and anything that you've kind of colored in or has a coating on it, it won't get etched, and then the rest basically comes off the board, and then you have a little circuit board. So for stuff like that.
Okay. Cool, as they say.
That is cool.
Unfortunately, Justin hasn't made it here. Because our next story, I'm sure, is very rant-worthy. Anybody have any comments about the previous story they want to mention? Okay. Anybody pay any attention at all when I was talking about the previous story?
I did, and you know what? I say go engineering. We're gonna make mistakes early on, and there's gonna be lots of trial and error. And Organovo, I think, is the company you're talking about. I'm a big fan of Organovo, and nothing but great things to say. Because eventually, it kind of reminds me, like everybody laughed at the DARPA challenge with the robots, but what people forget is every time they make an advance, it quickly gets propagated out there, and no one makes the same mistake again. It's put behind us very quickly. It's the same with Organovo and all these other companies, and it tends to, since all these things are getting digitized now, it's following an exponential trend, and I love exponential trends. So that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. Research that may have taken months, days, a year to get around the world. Heck, now it's around the world in 5 seconds. As soon as you publish that study, or as soon as if you're working on your research, you're probably communicating with people in other research facilities around. You come up with that device. Heck, you probably got a Kickstarter going in about 5 minutes. All right. The next story, not really news. There's a researcher who had been previously publishing some studies dealing with climate change. He's been to conference and things, known to be a skeptic. And back at the beginning of the year,
anyway.
Yeah, about the beginning of the year, actually there's an organization called the Climate Investigation Center. And using the Freedom of Information Act, which is interesting, they were able to discover that this guy, his name is Willie Soon. They were able to discover that this particular researcher is getting almost all of his funding from the energy industry, the Koch brothers. And, you know, he hadn't bothered to mention that. And that's kind of important. But it also, this particular article speaks to the fact that it isn't just this guy, Willie Soon. He works for the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. I mean, these guys you would expect would be very careful about vetting their studies. Yeah. They dropped the ball as far as I can see. You have another journal, the American Meteorological Society Journal of Climate, said they had to amend a 2009 article by Sun, making it clear that he had been funded by an energy company. Well, what about in 2009, guys?
Yeah.
You know, you run a journal, you've got some responsibility.
Yep.
They dropped the ball. Now it says over the years, Sun received more than $1.2 million from the Southern Company, a coal-heavy utility, ExxonMobil, the American Petroleum Institute Lobby Group, and the Koch brothers. Maybe that had a little bit something to do with the bias. Now, I'm not saying that his studies were bad science. They still could certainly be have been good science. But I certainly
crap.
Richard.
Yeah, what she said.
Yeah, you know, I mean, the study itself, these studies, I mean, if they passed Harvard had to do some kind of peer review. I'm sure of that. So the study itself may well have been conducted using the proper scientific protocols. But it's his conclusions from the material that are open to question.
Yep.
Pamela, what do you think?
Yeah, I was just about to say, it's all about transparency, isn't it? I mean, I was just thinking, when I went to visit CERN late last year. The building has literally transparent walls. Their work is transparent. Everything's transparent. And I was talking to some of the scientists, and I said, "Oh, only talk about it with, if you can. I don't want to." "Oh, of course I can talk about it. Everything's open here." It was so refreshing. Absolutely everything at CERN is completely transparent. You know the ins and outs of everything, and that's how all of the research should be everywhere. You should see where the funding. I mean, I was just, I was also, what came to mind when I was listening to you say that it was, I was pregnant with Chelsea and didn't realize until, and I was running for a parliamentary position here in Australia, and I was giving my speech, and my husband was doing the filming of it because he's a photographer, and so I said, full disclosure, the guy filming is, is my partner. We weren't married at the time, and I said, but he can't vote, so it doesn't matter, because he can't vote in this country. So, there you go. But that was one of the first things I said, and everyone went, "Oh, I don't care." You have to be upfront about everything. Otherwise, if it comes out later and it's not from you, it undermines everything you've done. Even if everything you've done is spot on correct, and it's so that makes your worthwhile work worthless. Anyway.
Right.
Transparency.
Yeah, that really does carry over into everything. And the thing is, okay, I'm watching Fox News. I'm maybe not expecting so much transparency. Heck, if I'm reading the New York Times, who knows? But when I'm looking at the Harvard, a study published by Harvard, my expectations are a lot more, a lot greater. I was thinking, we're entering the political silly season here in America. Well, I shouldn't say silly, except the results probably. But in any event, we're going to have all kinds of debates and things, and we're going to have politicians getting up, and they're going to be making all kinds of claims and stuff. What we need, this is technology, and this is what Dale a little bit could be talking about, the kind of an algorithm. If there was an algorithm, something like
algorithm. Sorry.
So we got that little fact check. Fact check has that little algorithm, so that when a politician he's saying I'm in favor of blah blah blah, a little thought bubble pops up in front of his head. It says BS warning, BS warning. 6 years ago, this guy said blah blah blah. Pamela's teaching numbers to Chelsea.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Pamela.
Oh no, I was listening. Sorry, I was just showing you. This is what she's pulling. That's what she's chewing on at the moment. I bought the alphabet a couple of months ago, and I have been looking everywhere for the numbers. And I walked past a shop window this morning on my way home from getting the Chromebook, and they were just sitting in this random shop window. So I went and bought them. So I've got 0 to 9 now, and it all fits in with the alphabet, which you've seen on previous episodes. So woohoo! Anyway.
I got a notice from somebody somewhere. Excuse me for a second. I have no idea what's coming from. Okay. Yeah, how do we know? When I go on to my science publications, like Science Daily, one of the things they do two things, and this is what I think everybody needs to do, whether you're talking about politics or anything. Okay, if you have the time. I'm a retired guy. I got plenty of time. I understand that. But it says this article was funded by such and such. When I look at NASA, at the bottom, the very last part, the very last thing I read, it'll talk about all the people that have provided additional funding. If I don't see that in a study, in an article or something, that's got to raise some questions. Also, they provide a link, this is Science Daily, to the original study. So I can press that link and I can go to the original study and read it for myself. Any idea what they were talking about? So again, you've got links and things, and these publications, The Guardian, New York Times, whatever it happens to be, you should always supply the source. There should always be some way for the reader to get back to the original article, a hyperlink or something.
Justin.
Justin has showed up just as we're finishing. Just as we're finishing an article, he might have. Where is Justin? Justin may not be here. Justin empty chair.
Justin's chair, anyway. Yes.
We can talk to Justin empty chair.
Well, you know,
sure
if Clint Eastwood can talk to an empty chair, we can too.
There you go. So tell me, Justin empty chair, what do you think about this climate change stuff? I don't know.
Well, from where I'm sitting, I don't know anything about it. It really seems to be a bunch of hooey. Besides, I get 2 moons. One moon is behind me, and the other one sits on top of me. It's terrible, I tell you.
There we go. Hand puppet. Hand puppet. I'll talk a little bit more, waiting for Justin to pop in.
Yeah.
Because it is such an important issue. And one of the great things about the internet, vast improvement. I'm sure, Richard, you can talk about this as well. You know, previously, you're going back 30 years or so, you really had no way of knowing very easily if what the person was talking about was actually true. You had the newspaper. You didn't have any hyperlinks in a newspaper, so it was really difficult. You really had to rely on the source to a very great extent. And now, with the internet, if I'm watching a guy, there you go, Richard. You know, you're watching a guy, he's giving a talk or something. Heck, you've got your mobile device. In 5 seconds, you can find out if this guy is really talking about something. You know, if he really is being authentic in what he's talking about. It's so easy to get to stories and to research stories. It's amazing. I've got a story. We may not get to it, but I might even dropped it from the lineup. It was talking about.
I can stick some links in too that will be of interest.
Okay. And it had to do with. There's Fact Check. Fact Check is definitely one of my favorite sites. And I always use after a debate. I've watched the debate. One of the first things I do next is I go to Fact Check, and there's always something in there that'll explain you know what the giving some information out. I'll show you the site I use in investigating politicians, including Justin's friend Bernie Sanders. Even Bernie Sanders I look at. And it's called On the Issue. I have a link to it. Let me turn my mic off if anybody wants to. Or you can let me talk while I'm searching. Bookmarks. It's in the bookmarks. Somebody's saying something.
That was Jason.
Justin.
I mean Justin.
Hello, Justin.
My brain. So.
This is real life Justin as opposed to just an empty chair. And I'll give you a link to the story, but you know all about it. The guy who was the researcher from Harvard University, who was, you know, he was mentioning how he would. I can't talk straight. The climate change researcher who was investigated over receiving funding from people like the Koch brothers.
Aha.
And then Pamela was talking about our friend Transparency.
Yes. Yeah, as for the journals, I put a couple of links there toward the end about bogus journals. There are some, the reputable journals are like Science or Physical Letters or whatnot, that they're truly juried and all. But there are a whole lot of other journals out there that will require you to pay them money. And then they will, quote, print, unquote, on the internet your paper, no matter what the paper is. It could be the color of unicorn feces. You know, it could be anything. And they will gladly treat it as if it was a scientific paper, and then you can claim to have been published in this journal of international unicorn studies. You know,
Correct
whatever
answer
it
on
is.
that, by the way, is pink or purple, depending on the season.
Right. And so I've got a couple links there that you might find good to keep. Pabst Blue Ribbon?
Oh, yeah.
For the discerning palate. That somebody else has.
I call it a session ale, but oh yeah, that's nice.
Okay. This is the site
Smooth.
that I use. And what I like about this site is that they'll give you a quiz. And what you do is a presidential vote match quiz. Now, they won't tell you, they'll show you different quotes. And then you pick the quote that's closest to where you stand. But it won't tell you who said it.
Search that.
Right.
And then at the end, it'll show you that you agree with a particular candidate X amount of time.
On the issues.org, huh?
All right, I'm going there now.
Now, I know you're a big supporter of Justin, Bernie Sanders. Okay, which one is it? Presidential. Who's the guy in the it looks like a surgeon or something.
Yeah, I remember his name.
Look, the Republican side. It looks like they're forming of a March Madness bracket, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I
mean, this is really getting ridiculous.
There we go.
And I went through the list, and I ended up with Gonzaga. I don't know how. Their chances of making to be the candidate for okay. Okay, it's 2016 presidential vote match quiz. Here I go.
Now, I know I saw this before about our friend Bernie Sanders, who I do support. I'd like to see him be president. But there's a blurb in here, and you see there's the other thing. It says quotes. So that if I click on that link, I'm going directly to the quote itself. I'm not, this is just,
that's nice.
One part of a quote. This is going to give me the complete quote. For instance, I can see he wanted the barring website promoting Yucca Mountain nuclear waste dump.
Yeah. Yucca is sadly an idea that failed. Which was largely a Democrat. I think it started under Jimmy Carter in the Department of Energy. But since then has been kept alive through some bad science got leaked out, people who were cooking books, 2 sets of books, all the rest of it.
Yeah, it's always bad when politicians are put in charge of science.
Now, probably I was a supporter of Bernie Sanders, and then I saw here he wanted to prohibit, co-sponsored a bill to prohibit breeding and possessing of big cats, and it's private. But if he extended that to all cats,
see, no, you got to take baby steps, Ed.
There we go, though. He voted. He signed the Genetic Engineering Food Right to Know Act. He wanted to require labeling genetically engineered food.
And I don't actually have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with labeling.
It implies that it's something to be afraid of.
No, it doesn't necessarily. It does if you're uneducated, but
Yeah, well, then there's a lot of people who are uneducated. In fact, most people are. That's how we got Bush for president.
I mean, I don't think they should make it like may cause XYZ, jump to conclusions of unsciency, yes, but I don't have a problem with it being labeled. And I think you'd find that so much of it would be labeled so quickly that people would just overall just ignore it.
Label it with what, though? Like a GMOs, like the complexity of GMOs, you have to depend on the regulated enterprise, the government, scientists to be able to go through it. What do you put on a label that could possibly describe a gene?
Well, this is true too, because the labeling for organic has been so watered down that you can take a farm that was using DDT 3 years ago and convert it to an organic farm because for 2 years you haven't used any, right? It's
meaningless.
It can become meaningless very quickly. But this is the world of words and laws.
Yep.
The thing about GMO, anything, what is sold in the supermarket that hasn't been genetically modified?
Yeah, just about everything has.
Heirloom seeds. That's as close as you can get. But I want our heirloom seeds.
Well, I think there is a difference. I think there's a difference, and this is a problem with saying something's genetically modified, right? Between putting Roundup resistance into a plant, or creating a plant that has emulates nicotine's nicotine plant insect repellentness. I mean, there's gradations of this that will completely be lost in that label.
Yep. Oh, there he is. Lost Ed for a moment.
I keep forgetting to turn off my microphone.
I'm scoring my quiz. I already got through the quiz here.
Okay.
And there it is. Bernie Sanders is the top.
What percent?
It actually put it at 68%.
That's about what I had.
Huh?
That's about what I had.
Yeah. And I've had some non-answers in there. They put Hillary Clinton second, but I would rate her much lower on this list. Mostly because I believe when Bernie Sanders speaks, he is not speaking as a politician in terms of he's not crafting a message to make it attractive or appealing to a segment, which I believe that Hillary does. So I don't believe that whatever answers she's given that I've agreed with, that she actually believes anything at this point. Joe Biden got above Obama for me, which I'm a little surprised on. Okay, so they didn't put Elizabeth Warren on my list at all.
There it is. Take the quiz.
Which is too bad because I believe that I guess she's not she's not officially in the race, but I bet she'd be equal or a little bit better than Bernie.
I got a 404 when I try to take the quiz.
I want Ron Paul to run.
You got his son, right? How much?
I wanted Liz Warren to run, but she can't.
Okay, John Bolton. How did John Bolton manage to score 5% total? How did I get even that much of a John Bolton? I got to go change those answers.
Sure.
Well, what happens there is John Bolton might have been in favor of the same something. He had something in common in his beliefs with Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders. So it's impossible to get a 0.
You know what? Hang on a second.
5% is pretty low.
They're showing more questions than I believe I answered. Did I forget? No, I didn't miss a section. Huh, interesting. Oh, I only did I? No?
Ed, could you put up the link to the actual quiz? I don't actually see that.
Okay.
They gave more responses.
On the issues, I'm all over there, but I don't. And I see take the quiz, but every time I click on it, It says 404 not found.
All right.
Oh, I got it.
Go to congressional leaders. Presidential primaries isn't enough.
Putting the link in the chat area for you, Richard.
Oh, in the chat area. Okay, go there.
Hopefully that'll work.
Wait, what is American exceptionalism? How come I don't even know what that is?
American what?
Exceptionalism.
American
is BS.
exceptionalism? That's just word noise.
Yeah.
It is. It's meaningless.
Means you believe the United Nations has too much power. U.S. should withdraw. Okay.
American what? Exceptionalism?
Yeah, it means America should just become a fascist state. Okay, sorry. Got to oppose that one strongly.
Yeah, it means yeah.
We were talking earlier about transparency and just about everything. I know that's something that you and Pamela have really talked about at length in Meaningless Words. I guess, is there any area where a government doesn't need to be completely transparent at some point? I can see if you're negotiating a treaty, and you're negotiating a treaty with a country, you know, I don't know, Russia or a country that controls the flow of information. They don't want their citizens to know about it. But once a president says, okay, we've got this treaty down, he's got to go to Congress. And once the president goes to Congress, there needs to be complete transparency. So I can't think of anything.
So after I cleaned up a couple of my non-responses on the last one, Bernie went to 83%.
Hey, I have to vote for him then.
What's his name? Bernie what?
Bernie Sanders.
Never heard of him.
Bernie Sanders.
Nobody has.
Independent from Vermont.
And you know, it's funny. Like, I went back and I noticed that I already follow him on Twitter. And there was a clip I'd recorded and shared where he absolutely nailed it on the bank bailouts. And I'd totally forgotten his name. Had just gone through the filter because I wasn't really tracking him back then. But yeah, apparently when you go, like, okay, so I went on this marathon the last few days. I've watched some 30 hours of everything in his in the YouTube playlist, Bernie Sanders, everything in the C-SPAN when you pull up Bernie Sanders, gone through and watched it all. And I have yet to come across a issue he's ranting about, defending, or putting forward that I don't completely agree with. So
What's
this
his
quiz
background?
does.
Is he an engineer or something? Or
No, because he's, you know, when you see him in interviews, they try to, when you see them trying to, I don't know, characterize or pin him down on something, his rebuttal is in real time, and it's articulate and it's thought out. He actually has he's one of the few politicians who you can encounter. Last one I can really say this about. Well, there's a couple current. There's an Elizabeth Warren. There's Al Franken, who's out there. But there's also, going back, Ralph Nader was the only other one who I've heard. Well, I could say, you know, this is somebody who's speaking from a point of view of conviction. Right now we have a governor in California, Jerry Brown. He's always spoken from a position of convictions, and intelligently so, you know. Can talk you through the other side of the argument and what it actually means, as opposed to talking points. The problem with Bernie Sanders, the problem he'll have running for president, is he does not speak in sound bites. He speaks in long form, articulate sentences, and actually tries to explain and lay out the reason for the idea, the mechanism of the improvement for it. That, you know, he's long-winded, basically. That's why it took me 30 hours.
can he simplify his message? Even though he's long-winded, can he talk to the people at a level that the average person can understand in the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, he basically, he'll start off on the tangenty, long-winded version, but then he can summarize it. What was it? One of the things he was saying, he's like, the idea that you could incarcerate, you can incarcerate at the rates we've incarcerated, and spend the money we've spent on incarceration, and get the same type of result you would get if you'd spent that money on education, is just ridiculous. I mean, it's stuff like that where it's just pointing out you can't incarcerate your way to a better society. You can educate your way there, but you can't incarcerate your way there. Things like that, just all the way down. It just makes sense. And one of the things too that's really interesting. It's like all these trade agreements that we've entered into. The worst of all was NAFTA. NAFTA has a section called Chapter 11. Chapter 11 says if you change a law in your country that affects business agreements, business arrangements, business can sue that country or that government for not just the loss of profits of its business currently, but for future profits as well. Most insidious law that's
pretty nuts.
Right, most insidious contract that anybody's ever negotiated into, and it was sold on the premise that, say, you built a railroad in Argentina, and the next day the Argentinian government nationalized the railroad. Well, they've just taken your railroad away from you, your investment. So you can sue them for your investment and all the future profits you would have made if your investment had been allowed to exist. However that's determined, it's a secret court of lawyers of unknown origin. But it's been used basically to trump democracy. It took place here in California. We had this additive that was put into California gasoline called MTBEs. They were designed to reduce pollution. Problem is, it turned out that they were caustic. They were eating their way through the tanks at the gas station at the bottoms, leaking into groundwater and the like.
Probably in your car, too.
Governor at the time, Gray Davis, said, okay, that's it. We'll ban the MTBEs from our water. And legislature passed a law and said, yeah, we'll ban MTBEs. Then they found out that the company, I think it might have been a Colombian company, it's not even in the country, that produces MTBE, under Chapter 11 of the NAFTA agreement, could sue the state for $30 billion plus. So then MTBEs became banned, but slowly phased out over a decade, right? In an arrangement to avoid $30 billion in trade policy. So it's been used in every time it's been used basically to trump law that was created by democracy. So it's one of the most insidious things. But one of my favorite things Bernie does is he goes through and says and points out all the things people said about trade agreements before they were made. The free trade with China was going to create 800,000 new jobs in the United States as we manufactured goods for a large growing market of would-be consumers in China. What happened? We lost 1.5 million jobs to manufacturing in China. NAFTA, well, it's going to add another 200,000 jobs in the first 6 months and 200,000 jobs every 6 months after, and what we saw was actually the opposite. And there's nothing in any of these trade agreements that says, hey, if you don't hit that marker, right, if you don't see the improvement that is being sold to people, then we'll nix the trade agreement, right? It invalidates the trade agreement if it doesn't do what it says it's going to do. So as this new TPP trade agreement comes up, Bernie Sanders is the only one I hear talking about it, against it. And he points out that it's not being talked about in any news source other than a little bit of public broadcasting. Nobody's even talking about this. It's another big trade, Pacific countries involved trade agreement that it's probably going to cost even more jobs locally. And And if it's anything like what NAFTA did, it's going to trump democracy. And we apparently have no legal recourse as the United States to get out of a trade agreement that's administered by and written by people. We don't even know who wrote the thing, which is amazing. The TPP, Bernie's telling us, you have to go into a room and you can read it there, but you're not allowed to make any copies of it. You're not allowed to take pictures of it or write it down in any way. You're supposed to go and read it there. I don't even think he said. I don't think he can even bring his assistants in, his lawyers that work for him or anything else. He's just got to go read it and then leave and try to commit this, 400-page document to memory. So
this American process you're talking about, I'm wondering if you live in the same country, because my America can pretty much ignore any freaking treaty they've ever signed anytime they want to. It seems pretty much like, oh, well, we don't really kind of have to do that. Being a little bit facetious.
Because, Ed, your America is made up of the 99%, right? It's the 1% that's writing the trade agreement. Actually, it's probably the 0.1% that's writing the trade agreement that owns 90% of the wealth in the country. And they want an agreement that the government, that a local government, a state government even, can't get out of. They want to write law as trade contract that we have to then adhere to.
What the hell happened to your middle class? It seems like it feels like the U.S. middle class just got wiped from the planet.
It did.
That's what it feels like from here. So what the hell happened? Because all the money is at that 1%. So without any sort of bias, like people buy into this bullshit on the web all the time that, someone puts up a website and, oh boy, let's all follow like sheep. But what do you think really happened? How did the money all end up in the hands of the 1%, and why did the middle class get wiped out? Is there a correlation between the two?
Yes, absolute. Direct correlation. Trade agreements. Trade agreements that allowed us to no longer have unions that created every labor law that there is in the United States in terms of hours you can be at work, in terms of how much you should get paid, in terms of how much medical treatment or days off you should get, all these, the age that you could work, so there's no child labor. All of these laws were avoided by creating a trade agreement that allowed us to pay people 30 cents on the dollar, or 30 cents an hour, or whatever it is, instead of $8 an hour. And one of the richest men in America, he's a tens of billions of dollars, is a guy named Jim Knight. Jim Knight owns Nike, right? Nike is, you would think, an American product. Well, great, but it's made by near slave labor, and it has been the most. I think it is the greatest defender of human rights when it comes to these sweat labor, slave labor type camps where people would be locked in buildings, forced to work, 120 hours without overtime, without any pay, without restroom breaks.
Where are these workers? Where are the workers?
Bangladesh, Vietnam.
Right. A lot in Vietnam, in China is happening, but there was also, what is it? Oh, God, I've completely blanked it, but there's some set of islands that you can get the Made in America tag because it's a protectorate set of islands, but they have no labor laws and no American law actually takes place there. But that's another big one. But because it's a protectorate of the United States, even though it has no labor law, no anything else, it can get the little American flag made in the USA tag.
Like Samoa or somewhere.
Okay, so let's take Nike. All right, I just want to correct my thinking, but let me walk down this road. So Nike wants to make the cheapest shoe it can, so that when it competes with its competitors, it wants to sell more shoes. And if you can lower that price by taking it offshore and following the existing laws, and I assume they follow the regulations that are in place for that, and they exploit them as much as they can within the law. I imagine they bend the shit out of it. but they try not to break it, and when they do break it, they have a bunch of lawyers that can defend them, right? So now, but what that means for me also is I benefit from that because I can go into Walmart and get cheap shoes, right?
Yeah, Nikes will still cost you $80. But here's the, I mean, this is just one, but that's one case. So here's the idea, though. Here's what happens when you multiply that across all of the U.S. manufacturing that's not there. There is no blue-collar jobs in the United States. If you're the first one overseas with your product, if you're the first tennis shoe to outsource to Vietnam, then you get rich, right? At a certain point, every tennis shoe has been outsourced. And they still got to be price competitive, right? So if everybody making tennis shoes is getting paid 50 cents an hour, and there's price competition in this country, the pressure becomes even greater then because now there's no blue collar. Nobody's got a job manufacturing tennis shoes in this one town, right? So everybody in this town's more poor, so they can afford less tennis shoes. So you got to get the price down even lower. So then you got to have your workers in Vietnam, not sufficient to have them work for 50 cents an hour. You got to have them work 120-hour weeks to keep up with the thing. So the idea that you can outsource for a cheaper price, yes. Can you outsource for a better economy? No, you can't. And in that first round of this, yes, people became extremely wealthy, but it's not sustainable. You and I now, if we all of a sudden outsourced a tennis shoe company to Vietnam, probably couldn't compete. I mean, we would be right there with if we were paying, if it was the old days and everybody was paying $8 an hour for the people to build the shoes, our price point, our price margins would be the same.
So I'm very interested in, I think we all want the same thing, which is people worldwide, we want people to be able to make a decent living. We want their families to be secure. We want some equity for all people on the planet. It's just how do we get there? And when you have a system set up so that companies it's based on profit and the regulation is geared towards that, I'm searching for answers because a lot of times I go down roads where, like, we've said lots of things, but a lot of times they're biases. And I wonder how much of what you said is just a familiar bias, and is it based on real data? Because it's hard to dig up that real data, right? Like, I do that often too, where we make a lot of assumptions, but I think the only way to attack this is to get to the heart of it, and I think we're all very biased. I'm probably more biased on the capitalistic side. I'm more of a capitalistic person. I probably have biases there. There's socialists. They're going to be biased on the social side, right? So we need a way, almost like a scientific way of attacking this problem so that we can part with those biases. Because don't you think some of what you said, at least portions, are more familiarities with news organizations that are telling you this is the issue and the problem without the necessary scientific follow-up to look at the real data?
Perhaps, although, I mean, I don't know that there is a news organization out there that talks about this to any great degree. Okay, so I'm somebody who's purely a capitalist. I mean, car salesman, for goodness sakes, right? And there is this concept I have of commission. Everything I earn is based on a commission. It's based on the product, the profit on the product. That's where I'm making my cut. There has to be a profit in the product for me to get a cut. When I look at what happened, it's sort of like when I've worked at a place where they've reduced commissions. I feel like all of outsourcing is an attempt to reduce the commission on the owner of the company on the final product to get more out of the dollars that are being spent on that product. And I don't think it's a leap. I mean, to me, it's common sense that if none of those dollars that are being used in the production of the thing, none of those commissions on a piece of the money being spent, is staying within the country, then it's leaking out. Now, less of it's leaking out because you're paying people less money for it. But every time you make it overseas, a little of that money stays overseas. Every time. And we're talking about a little bit of every tennis shoe, a little bit of every shirt, a little bit of everything. A little commission stays overseas. So there's got to be less money that stays within the pool in which it was created. The other aspect of it is more of it is being kept by the ownership, whether it's stockholders or personal owner of the company, regardless. So that's the wealth distribution, or wealth accumulation of wealth by the wealthiest in the nation. The other part of it is now I know that there's less people in the community with jobs. What does that mean? That means less people can have spending power. If less people have spending power, and believe me, I'm tied to the economy. I've been in commission sales for 20 years, more than 20 years, right? So when the economy's bad and people are afraid to spend money or don't have money to spend, my income suffers. When things are going good, when people are optimistic about the economy, I make more money because people spend more money. So I understand what it means for my community, my friends and neighbors. When folks have good jobs and money to spend, I make money, and that's what economy is. That's what the ecosystem of the economy is. It's not whether or not you make or a company makes a profit. That GDP is meaningless, really. It's whether or not people in your community are making money, because if they are, they spend it on each other. This is who we spend money with.
Let's talk about human behavior, though. Okay, so take yourself, for instance. You have a family. You want to make sure they're safe and sound. When you're selling cars, you're going to do everything you can in your power to make a profit, and you will bend what you're saying to an extent that you're comfortable with, where you can bend something to the point where you'll get them to buy, because you're not an evil person. What you're doing is you're trying to sell a car to support your family, right? Mm-hmm. And that same thinking, I think it carries on through the entire capitalistic system. We all try to market and sell and paint something as wonderful, because we're doing it for a noble purpose, which is our own families. And I think that humanistic behavior, it carries through at all levels, including the 1%. They're worried about... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's an element of that. I mean, everybody should work to a certain level for their self-preservation, which is what always surprises me, that we've had so many Republican leaders in this country, because I feel like that's the opposite of self-preservation. And I wish more people did work in their best interest, because we wouldn't have allowed outsourcing, we wouldn't have allowed the deregulation, we wouldn't allow tax breaks for companies that are basically manufacturing. Their manufacturing is headquartered in other countries. So I think people should be looking out for their best interest in that regard, right? But there is an aspect too of sustainability. So if I was as a car salesman, if all car salesmen were just absolute head rippers, you know, and if I in the little town of Davis, if our dealership got a reputation for ripping people's heads off and, you know, charging more than the dealership in the next town and treating people, exploiting people, lying to them, doing this sort of stuff, misleading them, guess what? People would be doing business elsewhere. So, you know, you have a reputation as a company to take care of people and to look out for their best interests when you're guiding them through this process that generates more business down the road. My problem is, when I look at all the outsourcing that takes place, I see a lack of sustainability. I see companies who don't care that the base who's buying their product isn't participating in the profit itself, isn't profiting from it as well.
I think...
Let me jump in here for a second. Having gone quiet and having had my tea, so my voice is okay.
Me.
You talk about capitalism. The biggest problem the United States capitalistic system has had is monopolies. That's that 1%. But that's getting harder, I believe. we're evolving a financial system, if you will, where it's much easier for individuals to start up a business. Even, I mean, we have Kickstarter campaigns where people have raised over $1 million. It's also the technology companies. They're so big, it's harder for them to pivot when somebody comes up with something new. Whereas that private individual can come up with that new thing, that new app, whatever the heck it is, and can make money. Eventually, they probably sell out to the big company, but it's so much. It's getting easier and easier for the people in the middle class to start their own business. And the middle class has got money. They don't have as much money as the 1%. And that the 1% can go out and buy a $50 million mansion. Well, the middle class can't do that. But the middle class can buy a home. The middle class can buy a car. It is not that bad.
I agree with you, Ed. I really do agree with you. But just my whole point of this whole thing is that there's elements of Nike within all of us. There's different elements. We've all evolved in the same humanistic system over tens of thousands of years. It's in all of us. And in order to solve the problem, right, we have to understand what we are as human beings and the strategies that we employ. Like some of them are a Kickstarter. It's democratizing business, right? And it's flattening things out somewhat. For us to keep going down that path and to make people all over the world, no matter where they are, what their income bracket is, what their sex is, it doesn't matter. If we want to try to equalize that as much as possible, I think we have to all get off our high horse and look at what are we really. There are elements of Nike in all of us, right? I'm invested in these companies. It's part of my retirement, right? I have stuff in my retirement that I'm invested in. There's a bunch of stuff in there I didn't have. It's like you got 3 things to choose. There's oil companies in there. There's all sorts of things that I benefit from, right? And
Does that mean the system's failing?
I don't know what it means, but I don't think any of us are innocent. I think we're all part of the human race, and we've all evolved in a similar culture that's gone tens of thousands of years.
Yeah, and there's an element of truth to that because I don't have really much of an option. Actually, I can't. It's really pretty hard to opt out of buying a T-shirt that wasn't made by slave labor at this point.
Exactly. Yes.
I mean, I don't really have an option to buy American. I'd love to. I don't know if there is anybody making a T-shirt or socks or anything in this country anymore. But it doesn't prevent me from pointing out the fact that I'm irritated that somebody can call himself an American company and run their company in a place that obeys none of the American laws, that isn't even a democracy, that these companies are setting up in places where there is no democracy, where they're using people like, and I also get the feeling, an extrapolation of this is, if it wasn't for all those damn labor laws, we'd be able to exploit you here at home. We wouldn't have to ship the stuff over an ocean because we could just treat you like garbage. Well, sorry, but that to me says that you're not an American company, at least not a democratic American company. You might be a version of America that I don't want to see put in place. So yeah, look. When this country was the strongest, when education was free, when we boomed and blossomed as a nation, taxes on earnings on the top 1% was 90% on new earnings.
Wow.
It's nothing now. It's pretty much next to nothing now. But this is how we fueled an entire generation of innovation. We sent people to college for free. The California State Universities. The University of California, which we have people from all over the world paying great money to be part of. They want to put people $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in debt to get through the system. Used to be free. And oh yeah, like why is it? I mean, you want to talk about monopolies? Why is it that every credit card offer I've gotten lately, after the 0% 6 months program where I get all the money for free, they want to charge 24%? You know, my average car loan that I'm putting out right now is like 2 or 3%, right? There's competition for the car loans. There's a lot of banks trying to get that business, and it's up to the dealership who they send it to, and so they become more and more competitive. There must be 2 or 3 banks issuing credit cards at this point for them to be able to sit at 24%, 19, 18%, and say, this is what you get. It just doesn't make sense unless there's no competition there. So I don't know. To me, it just looks exploitive, and every time they complain, like, well, you shouldn't have had labor unions, you shouldn't have had unions. To me, there's no difference, by the way, between a union and a corporation. If you want to say that corporations can be a big organization that looks out for its own interest, why can't a labor union do that? Why is a labor union demonized when it's a bunch of people looking out for their own interests? Yeah. And yet a corporation, well, that's a good thing, but labor unions, they're an awful thing. That's a socialist thing. How are they different? You know, and so they found a way to destroy one of those, which is to outsource them.
Let me interrupt. We've got Michael Jobin from our chat area, and actually he talks about socialism. There is a stigma in the world's socialism, and it's being tied to government. The U.S. government was made to govern corporations from hurting the general public and the public from each other.
Yeah. Except you know, this is okay. So this is why I love the Bernie Sanders and the Elizabeth Warrens, and
yeah,
it's because they're focused in. They're laser focused in on the fact that, you know, there is an attempt to take the gloves off against the American people. You know, Citizens United is the most anti-democracy ruling this nation has ever encountered.
Yeah.
It means the few can spend unlimited money and call it free speech within our economic system. We've just valued money above speech, basically, is what it is. We've equivocated money as speech, and therefore there's no holds barred. The wealthy can spend and portray. You know, like Bernie Sanders. One of the funny things, Bernie Sanders was on the Bloomberg network. Bloomberg network is owned by a billionaire named Bloomberg. You know, and so he's talking about we need to tax the rich a little bit more, and you know, a little bit of wealth distribution would actually be healthy for the country because it's become too top heavy. And the guy's like, well, I hope you know you're on the Bloomberg network, so he wouldn't be too happy to hear about that. And he's like, yeah, you work for him. I don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, an entire network owned by a billionaire individual. This isn't uncommon. This isn't strange now that we have 0.1% of the population running 99% of the media. I mean, that's okay in some insane version of America, right? America is supposed to be a place, yeah, where we don't have to agree. We can fight it out. We can duke it out. But more and more, our public forum is owned. And when the public forum is owned by fewer and fewer individuals with specific points of view, it gets dominated by those points of view.
They don't own the information highway. It's the internet. This is the worst time in the world for anyone to attempt to control information.
Wait. But do you forget they attempted to throttle what sites you could even get access?
Yes, they attempted.
No, you don't understand. I agree. Internet is a huge threat to this, right?
Right.
But there was an attempt to throttle it. I mean, there was an attempt to stop that communication from being free and an equal platform. They don't want an equal platform.
That's true.
They don't want an equal platform. And that's what I'm saying. Like, this is if the only bright side to the destruction of the middle class and the outsourcing of American manufacturing, the only silver lining is that they didn't get to turn us into 50-cent an hour, 120-hour-a-week slaves. I mean, that's the only silver lining, is that we at least prevented them from doing it here.
So,
okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dale.
well, I think there's lots of truth in what Justin just said. But, so I work in Canada, and I don't know if things are radically different here. I think human beings are human beings, but so working for one of the largest companies in private companies in Canada, they are so concerned about ethics, making sure that in a deal we're trained. We have training to make sure that ethics come first, and we don't, attempt to screw somebody over. In the case of when dealing with the public, we have huge amounts of environmental training that's all mandatory, that we all have to take. That the smallest spills, the tiniest things that we can change within the environmental system, they are all over us. The training, it's relentless. They try really hard to be as green as possible. So I don't think it's rampant everywhere. I don't know why. And is our company perfect? Of course not. There's going to be elements of, they have, I don't know how large it is, 70,000 paychecks that they have to pay out, right? Of course they're going to want to do things that's going to serve them so that they can continue to pay all these people, right? But I think what I'm saying is, I think you're right too, but I think the issue isn't one-sided. I think it's way more complex.
Pamela, did you want to say something? Richard. Oh, go ahead, Pamela.
No, sorry, I was going to say not at the moment. My brain is starting to tire. I've had 2 4-hour nights in a row of sleep.
Oh,
okay, how about you, Richard? Give you a chance to get your 2 cents in. Are you too tired? Is your 2 cents turned into half penny?
Yeah. In Saskatoon, what company is it that you work for that's so ethical? I'd like to know more.
I work for Bell Canada. Ultimately, as it filters down, it goes to Bell Media, which is that I work for, and everything they do, the evidence, the direct evidence I've seen, they care. They do their very best. Now, do they have layoffs? Yes, they go through layoffs. Do they do things strategically? But ethically, they're very, very sound. Is there bad people in a company? Of course there is. There's always a mix of human beings and everything. But all the direct evidence I've seen of what the expectations are, if you were to ignore a small environmental spill, our company would be all over us. Internally, it would not be a good thing. The right thing to do is to pay out the money to clean it up properly, no matter how insignificant the spill is. To care about even the aesthetics of the environment, where they put up power poles, where they do all these different types of work. They truly go way overboard to try to make it a better place.
So that sounds like a good company. Contrast that with the family that owns Walmart, which holds more wealth than the 120 million poorest Americans. 120 million people have less wealth than this one family, and yet they employ their employees part-time so they don't have to pay benefits. They pay them the minimum wage for the most part, and have an HR department that teaches them how to get on, that trains them and coaches them on how to receive welfare subsidies so that they can survive long enough to show up to work the next day. I mean, this is
nuts.
Right. There's a contrast between the company you're working for, and there's you can look at examples of. I mean, I'm not saying being a company makes it a bad thing. Genentech is a company down the road that pushes some drugs that are more expensive than cheaper alternatives. All of their employees, however, receive amazing benefits and are very well cared for. So there's actually they're owned by Roche now, so that might be part of the.
My only point is things are always far more complex than the surface. That was my only point.
Yeah, but what I'm largely talking about is what you brought up to begin with, is what happened to the middle class. The middle class was
screwed.
Well, was destroyed, and media, like, okay, so NAFTA, the NAFTA thing, when that thing went down. No, sorry, got to go back further.
Glass-Steagall.
Not Glass-Steagall. Well, Glass-Steagall's a bitch, though. But the what is it? The National Communications Act of '98, was it? Which allowed monopolization of media. There are probably 50 radio stations I can get out there on my radio in my car. There's 3 companies that own all but 2 of them, 3 of them. Right?
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Clear Channel.
It used to be illegal to own the newspaper, the radio station, the television station in the same town. Yeah. National Telecommunications Act '98 ruined that. So there was a massive consolidation on the information you can get. Then NAFTA comes out. NAFTA, nobody even read who voted for it. It's going to create all these jobs. It didn't. It took jobs away, and it took democratic laws off of the table. It trumped democratic laws voted on by locals. So this is what I'm talking about. This is what's happened, and all the deregulation through the 80s. I mean, we lost manufacturing. Most of it, we talk about it today like it's still happening. Most of this happened under Reagan. Most of this happened under Reagan. Most of our manufacturing disappeared under Reagan and then the Bush the first. Between that 12-year run, pretty much decimated American manufacturing, and yet somehow the right wing was claiming we need to buy made in America. Like it was, And by the time Telecommunications Act is passed, then NAFTA, Telecommunications Act, nobody reported on, and then NAFTA too. Like nobody looked into the details. You don't see or hear any reporting or investigative reporting figuring out what's even in these trade agreements, and they're crafted by a small population of interested parties where the mass population who may be losing jobs over it has no understanding of it and has no say of it because there's no communication on it. Because people own the television station. People own the newspaper. So the television station doesn't tell you what's going on. The newspaper doesn't because it's the same interest that owns both, and they've got some money to be made in this.
But nobody pays attention to the newspapers anymore. And hasn't technology moved the goalpost already? Law hasn't caught up. Politicians haven't caught up. The technology, if you're talking about entertainers, this is the greatest time in the world to be somebody starting out in entertainment. You go on the YouTubes. You post your song on the YouTubes.
You're right. Ed, we could sing for our money. We can put the hat down on the curb.
Go ahead, Pamela, you want to say something?
This is
Pamela's
what we
got to jump in here. Come on, Pamela. Don't let them overpower you. Go ahead, Pamela.
No, I've done my fair share of ranting about redistribution of wealth and things like that, but the flip side of it is show the government how little you need them. Show the corporations how little you need them. I had to go out today into the capitalistic world and buy a Chromebook. I was saying this before you got here, Justin. My laptop died yesterday. I'm halfway through a law degree. I need a computer. Like I need water. So I went out. The cheapest one there was $253.30. They're having a sale. So I got a Chromebook. That's going to get me through the rest of my degree. Cool. But while I'm standing there buying my Chromebook and my baby's crying because she wants to get out and run around and touch things, and I wouldn't let her because she was strapped in a stroller. Anyway, there were televisions there. Television. I don't even have a TV, right? Televisions for like one of them was $5,726. It was the price on it, and it wasn't the biggest one. what the hell? Who needs a $5,000 television? I mean, I'm looking at going overseas in November. I've got a few things to do. So I was sitting there calculating in my head. I know the airfare prices, this is what I'm saying. So I could go Cairns to Bali, Bali to Amsterdam by flying. I can train to France to this conference I'm going to go to. I could fly then to Exeter to visit English family. I could fly to California and visit Justin. I could fly to Hawaii and visit a friend, and then I could fly back to Cairns for the price of that television. Now, what would you rather do?
Okay, notice we didn't mention fly to Saskatoon. Again, Canada.
Yeah.
Well, we've already seen Saskatoon from 200 feet at night. What else is there?
But do you see what I'm saying? Why, in what universe, who needs a $5,000-$6,000 television?
You know what? I think different people like different things. Do you need it? No, it's not a need. It's a luxury. There's a friend I have that he plays a lot of video games and he has parties all the time, and that's his world. He loves it. It's like a sport. That's what he does. That's his interest. And to have a large TV and a gathering is important, to have that social contact with a bunch of people all playing on the same screen. You know, different people, different strokes for different folks.
And if it was an ultra high definition TV, it might be something that a filmmaker might use. You know, shooting on 4K resolution, which is more than the 1900 by 1080 high definition TV. So you know, there might be somebody that would need it for their work.
It's not a necessity. If there's people around the world that have nothing, and we're enjoying these luxurious items, and I think that's more what you're commenting on.
Right.
Well, I'm just wondering. You know, what am I trying to say? You know, I see my friends with their kids. Now, my daughter, I keep her away from, you know, I mean, she says hello to you guys and that, but she doesn't have. But and I don't mean anything derogatory to my friends if they see this, but I go out to dinner with my friends and their kids, and the kids are at the dinner table in a restaurant with all their devices to keep them quiet, and they don't interact with each other nor with the parents. And I get that they don't want tantrums and stuff like that, but why aren't people interacting? But anyway, the point I'm saying.
The way they are. If they're on Facebook, they're interacting with their Facebook friends.
Then they're not interacting properly. Yeah, and okay, so why don't we show the corporations and show the governments how little we need them and be self-sustaining? But you can't be self-sustaining. I mean, your friend who plays the video games, Dale, is he going in? Is he saving up the $5,000, $6,000 and paying cash for this TV, or is he putting it on credit and paying interest?
Yeah, right.
Now, in his case, he's in his 40s, so he has a bit of money, right? He's in a decent financial position. But you're right. Most people are putting it on credit, and that if we ever have a dollar crisis or anything like that, we're in big trouble with all this.
So you're enslaving yourselves.
Yes.
No.
Why?
First of all, if you manage your credit properly, self-control. I own this condo because I borrowed money. I borrowed a lot of money back in 1984 or whatever. I borrowed money. I wouldn't have this condo if I didn't, but I was able to pay it off. Now I don't pay any rent.
But
That's right. That's right. A roof over your head is different to a television. That television is going to be worth $1,000 next year. That's not the same. It's not comparison.
That's also right for another reason, because Ed, most people aren't responsible like yourself. They rack up a huge amount of debt and they're not able to handle it because, you know, it gets back to evolutionary reasons, which is it activates that pleasure center in the brain for them, and they want more. They have this insatiable need, this evolutionary need that they can't control. The real problem is psychological. It's where we've come from. There's a few people on the planet. There's a minority like yourself, Ed. I'm able to control my credit. Pamela, definitely for sure. Richard, I'm sure you can, but there's most people are not. If we have a dollar crisis or some sort of crunch where the bank does a call and says, you're going to pay us our money now, or we're going to take what leverage we have from you, kind of like 2008, we're in trouble, and I think Pamela's right there.
Personal debt has dropped, but you're right, it hasn't dropped significantly. There are too many people who are overextended. My opinion is the majority are not. And I don't, my evidence would be it's easy, how easy it is to get credit, and the banks aren't going to give people credit unless they can make money out of it. You got to make money out of it. Now they get a little greedy. You're exactly right, Dale.
Yeah.
They also do get greedy. They gave people too much money to buy homes they couldn't afford,
Right.
and the whole freaking system fell apart. So Dale, you are correct as far as that goes. But people also learn, and right now I see some people going to the supermarket and paying with a credit card. Man, you got to buy your food on credit. That's not good. But that's a minority of people. So I don't think it's that bad. But it is. Go ahead.
I just say they might be like me. I have a savings account that I can't remember the PIN number for, and I have it looks like a credit card, but it's a debit credit card, so it's not bank money, it's my money, and I have to put the money on from my bank account. So I go on online banking and transfer the money across, and then I pay by credit card because I know that PIN number.
Right. I was going to say that. Yeah, they're debit cards. There also are some credit cards that will automatically debit an account, just like a debit card does. So, it might be on credit or it might not be.
It looks like my groceries are on credit, but they're not.
Yeah.
You know what? I have friends that are like, okay, to be very specific without names. Single mom, not educated, one kid, really having a tough time. Like, we have all these advantages because of knowledge. And because of the knowledge and some self-control, we're in a pretty special position, when you look at ourselves and what we're doing. There's a lot of other people right now. I think we all want the same thing, which is reforms that can help equalize and spread out the distribution of wealth so no one has to suffer. No one wants to see anybody suffer. But all the time I see this, and we all have differences of opinion of how to solve it and what the systems are like. But it just hurts so much to see somebody that doesn't have the knowledge, that with a little bit of guidance and going to a few of the right places, her child would break a cycle of poverty, because we all know what comes with poverty, right? There's all sorts of other social systemic issues, and it comes down to some knowledge, and to get that knowledge, it usually requires at least a little bit of wealth.
Now that Pamela's awake, Pamela's awake, wait a minute, Justin. I got a story here I want to throw in for Pamela. She's wide-eyed and bushy-tailed here. She's ready to talk.
I had to eat something. I was fading.
I'm gonna have to warn you, Pamela. You gotta fish. You got a fish that's maybe gonna invade. Maybe it's gonna invade Australia.
Yes.
And it's a perch. It's the climbing perch. And this is the James Cook University at Queensland, Australia. There you go. In fact, I'm going to. Never mind. I'll never figure. Okay, whatever. You can look at the top of my head. Sorry. That's where you're going for your college, your law degree?
I did my nursing degree through JCU, James Cook University.
These people must know what they're talking about, right? And it's Australian marine biologists are worried that a species of perch native to Southeast Asia, the climbing perch, will soon make its way onto the Australian mainland. The little sucker can walk, putting native species and other fish and some birds even at risk. And over the past 40 years, the fish has been slowly made its way to Indonesia, then Papua New Guinea, and now it's been spotted on a couple of Australian islands. The Strait Islands of Boigu, Boogie?
Yeah, that's in the Torres Strait.
And Steelball.
If you stand at the northernmost point of the North Island in the Torres Strait, you can see, just with your naked eye, Papua New Guinea.
Only 160 from the Australian mainland. They're coming, Pamela. Marine biologists are worried that the fish will take over the habitat now being occupied by other species. because it has so many survival capabilities. It can crawl on sharp, pointy gills. It can breathe air like a mammal-like lungs. It can survive for 6 to 7 days without any water, and it can bury itself in the mud. And if that were not enough, researchers found instances where the freshwater fish can live near sea level salt water. I'm just a little bit ahead because you have some good news, Pamela. Despite its super fish characteristics, it can't swim to Australia. You get there, it will likely have to hitch a ride on the bottom of a boat or be tossed overboard by a fisherman. For this reason, environmentalists are giving fishermen and boaters information about the fish and are being encouraged to help prevent its spread to Australian shores. There you go.
Yeah, I'd like to know more about that fish. I'd like to see one. I might see one when I'm in Indonesia in a couple of months. But that just reminded me. I don't want to get too off topic, but I don't know if anyone saw my post the other day on Facebook about. I was reading The Time Machine by H.G. Wells to Chelsea, which I've read myself before, many years ago. And I was thinking that, has everyone here read The Time Machine? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
No? Okay. So you got Morlocks and Eloy.
Yeah.
Now, who here identifies with Eloy? Who was rooting for the Eloy? Yeah, okay. Who was rooting for the Morlocks? Dale was.
That's probably more like us than we'd like to admit.
Yeah, because...
Man, that's a heck of a choice. That was a heck of a choice. The Eli, they had that hot girl, I forget her name, hot actress. So I can relate to her, but go ahead.
Okay, but
Yeah.
Eloy
were kind of brainless, weren't they?
Yeah, because they're the sheep. So they look more like you and I do today, but the human race in 800,000 years has split into two completely separate species. And one of those species eats the other one. That's their food source. So I thought, well, is that different to how many, a couple of million years ago, whenever it was, that we walked out of the ocean, and some of our cousins stayed in the ocean because they liked it there, and then humans started eating fish.
Seafood.
Is it that different? And yet, because the Eloy look like us, most people relate to the Eloy, except for Dale, who... But most people are more like Morlocks. Anyway, I just thought that was an interesting thought.
That's a very good point. Very interesting, because actually one of the things I was thinking about, that word invasive species, we read about all the time, and it always had a bad connotation. You're worried about this foreign species coming into the environment and taking over from native species. And that can be bad, could even be good.
Yeah.
Shouldn't we have the scientific view, and shouldn't we examine and say, at its self-interest, this new species of fish, maybe it tastes good, maybe it's got more vitamins in it, maybe it's better for us than the native fish, but our tendency is it's our native fish, and perhaps we take extraordinary means to try to save the native fish, and I'm not so sure that's the right approach to take.
Well, in Australia, just the example I have as to why we're so stringent, because other countries are not. Because my husband, when he was here, soon to be ex, he would complain about you actually have to wash your shoes if you've got any mud on them before you come back into Australia. Everything else, or you throw them out, they get confiscated, incinerated. And he says, I can walk into the UK with anything from Australia, they don't care. And the difference is, I remember when I was about 22, I took one of these river cruise educational things up in far north Queensland, and it had a tour guide, and he was saying all these facts about the area. Anyway, so we're in the Daintree National Park, which is world renowned, and he was saying just in that portion of the Daintree National Park, not the whole country, just that bit of it, there was over 1,000 species of plants. And he said, by comparison, the entire United Kingdom has 40. That's That's why we're so protective, because we have such a diversity that if we don't protect it, it'll all be gone. And we're one of the last places on the planet where we have this diversity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So that's why they're saying keep these fish out.
And Australia has got species not found, many species not found anywhere else, so it's even more important to protect your marsupials. Very definitely.
Right, those drop bears, you got to look out.
Diversity.
Yeah, right.
Excuse me.
Yeah, that's it. So that's why they're saying keep the fish out. But I'm interested in having a look at this fish, so I'll have to go overseas and have a look at it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
Because it's not that different from us, is it, really? If it can walk, I mean, we walked out of the ocean not that long ago.
My gosh, you're right. We're an invasive species.
Definitely.
We are by far the most invasive species.
Yes, ever in the history of the planet as we know it.
And isn't it great?
Yoo-hoo.
I'm having fun.
Yeah.
Oh, self-interest as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I'm looking out for the Homo sapiens, man. I don't care about no stupid little fishies or something. Unless I can eat them. Unless they're good to eat.
Then you're a Morlock, Ed.
Ed, we're Morlocks.
Well, okay, you know, my memory, were they kind of bald? Were the
No.
Morlocks kind of bald?
Their
No,
hair.
they had long white hair, and they're like.
They were very distinguished.
Okay.
Yeah. No, they lived underground, so they had like grey, bluey skin, and yeah.
It's funny. Just a comment. So Pamela, reading your Facebook posts, I'm learning more about you, right? You learn a little bit about a person as you kind of see their posts and stuff. I think the activism and stuff that you look at, I have a lot of the same goals, but just completely different ways of thinking about it, but that utopian sort of to get to a point where in more equal society that nonsense isn't happening. I find I want very much the same thing, just looking at it from a different set of eyes, and I think that diversity is good.
Together we can save the world.
That's right.
We'll just keep talking to each other until we come up with the solution.
You know, diversity. We are saving the world. And I've just posted another story, one of the favorite stories of the entire week, showing how much evolution, our society, American society, many other places, is evolving for the better. And this is an article in the New York Times. Certainly not going to read the whole thing, but transgender children's books. You didn't even see those words 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Now we have you can go online and you can buy transgender children's books. And just quick screen share.
Rethinking normal.
Sam Martin, small group of emerging authors, emerging transgender authors, not staying in that closet anymore. And he's reaching out to kids. There's a book by someone in Oklahoma, a memoir by a transgender teenager from Oklahoma. That book could never have been printed 10 years ago. And the big publishing companies wouldn't go anywhere near a book like that. Now,
not only that teenager who wrote it probably just would have committed suicide rather than talk about it.
Yeah. Here's another guy. Alex Gino, the author of George, identifies as a genderqueer, a gender identity that falls outside the male-female binary. There you go, self-identification. I can identify myself as anybody I want, and if nobody else likes it, that's too bad. So that's, things like that prove to me how much better our society is evolving.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
happening fast too.
My children, I guess not the first time. There's a gender switching person that works for my baby mama who my kids know. Some of my kids know growing up. So they're used to it. It seems kind of normal. But we were watching Chopped the other day. And there's at least a cross-dresser. I don't know. The terms, the definitions become... There's too many of them. I admit to being too old to keeping up with all these specific versions of whether it's. I mean, transvestite doesn't even like cover any of the ground. That's a category unto itself, and there's subcategory upon subcategory upon subcategory. But it's at least a cross-dresser who is in the pre-interview to the cooking show Chopped. Looks like a dude. And then shows up walking in and as a Latino woman. And my kids were like, well, do the judges know that it's guy? I'm like, yeah, I'm sure they know. I'm sure they don't care. But and then as soon as that sort of like them going, huh, that's weird, then it was just about the cooking show. To them, none of that mattered. Then it was about the food in the cooking show and how it was, it was just curious, but interested. Like, wow, that's weird. And then, so yeah, we are living in an age when the guy who used to be on the Wheaties box, right? And I admit to being too young to have seen Bruce Jenner as any sort of athletic role model. But as he has come out with his new identity, as Manning has become Chelsea, as these things become more common, it's sort of like an avalanche kind of an effect where, we went through it with again, I'm gonna date my ignorance of we went through it with the gays, right? Whereas it's like Rock Hudson? You're kidding me, right? Like how long ago was that, right? And then more and more and more and more and more and more, and then then there's a Fox News anchor who comes out as gay, and then shortly thereafter there's I don't know if it's CNN or MSNBC anchor who's like, oh yeah, I'm also gay, and it's like, right? And to the point where we're getting to the point where it is possible to be open and honest about your identification, sexual or just identity, because some of the identities are weird. Some of them it's like, I'm a guy, but I dress like a woman, but I still like women, but not all the time. Like, it gets really complicated, and to hear somebody actually break down all the definitions, you can get lost really quickly.
I think we should just get to the point where we're just people.
Yes.
That's nice. That's how I raised. For goodness sake, my daughter Chelsea's named after Chelsea Manning, and I get people come up to me with their sons, and they're like, "Oh, I've got a boyfriend for you," and I'm like, "She might not like boys. We don't know yet. It's a bit young to tell." Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be raising her that she can. I like boys exclusively, but that's not a choice. That's just. That's just how I am.
But don't you feel like okay, so I had like such a progressive liberal mother that she would have loved for me to have turned out gay. I feel like I kind of disappointed her by being exclusively a heterosexual, right? Like I feel like I kind of let mom down because she would have loved to support me and to do it in a sort of activistic way where it was bucking other parental trends at the time, and like she would have really enjoyed that, I think. And she just should have had more kids.
Just you can't help it. It's how you were born.
Right. I can't help it. I'm heterosexual. I can't help it. That's just the way I'm wired. But I also feel like maybe there's some rite of passage to an extent of not being accepted by your family. That you strike out on your own and affirm your own self-identity without having been fully accepted by her family.
Do you know what?
That's an important part of sort of loving yourself, warts and all. And I sort of also think about it in terms of all the vast number of anti-gay conservative politicians and preachers who have, in the final rundown, the final look back, turned out to have been gay the whole time and have repressed it. And so there's a danger and a self-loathing thing that can go to it. And I you can look at the Hastert.
No, Hastert.
You can look at, right. You can look at what's his name?
Who's that picture of, Richard?
That's Chris Chapani, the cook from the Chopped TV show. It has a truck, apparently, a food truck.
When you were saying about, rite of passage and all that, you made me laugh because I was Skyping with a friend the other day and talking about my daughter was there, and my friend said, she might turn out to be a nun. And I went, I hope not. And he said, what would you prefer your daughter to be, a Catholic or a lesbian? And I'm like, a lesbian. I don't want a Catholic.
That's exactly
the guilt involved, huh?
Or worst case scenario, both, right? Like, this could happen.
So if she turns out to be a Catholic, then I will be the supportive, accepting mother. And
no, you won't. No, you won't.
I have to be.
If you're a woman who likes
hypocrisy of it too.
Where are you going to find the greatest concentration of other women? The nunnery.
Yeah, but where do you think the origins of lesbianism come from?
I think there's always something. I mean, when I was in Switzerland and I was hanging out with one of my friends, and he said to me, he wished he'd taken a photo of my face at the time. He said, what will you do if she turns out to be an artist? And I went, I will support her and help her sell her art. And he's like, nah. So I think we all have a rite of passage. It may not be to do with gender identity and sexual preferences, but our parents and we as parents have expectations.
Yeah, and
I'm sure I'm sure you disappointed your mother in some way.
Right, and you should, and this is the thing with the self-loathing Republicans, self-loathing gay Republican, which I think is a horrible state to be in. But what's the wingnut looking off camera Minnesota Bachman?
Oh.
Okay, her husband, they have like 13 kids, but they're all adopted. Her husband runs a gay rehab clinic. Being in California where homosexuality is out in the open and nobody's really ashamed or afraid of being themselves. Huh?
The gay alcoholics?
No, it's gay rehab. It's where you go and learn how not to be gay anymore. Yeah.
Oh, this is not funny. This is really sad, serious stuff.
The thing about the gentleman is, and I don't mean to poke too much fun, but there are mannerisms that go along with being a homosexual in there's certain flares, there's certain fabulousness that, as a Californian, it's out in the open, and so it's recognized. They're fabulous. I get it. And he's very fabulous, right? but to the point where he started this clinic, obviously, in recognition of his own inner demon struggle. But these are people who never broke away. These are people who never embraced their individuality. And there's something really sad about it, but there's also something really empowering about all the completely out gay people who I've known and had as friends over the years, which is that the other side of that is that when you do break away, when you move from the deep south out to California because you know that you'll be better accepted, you're more at peace with yourself. You're more of a complete individual. So there is sort of maybe it is sort of a rite of passage.
you're bad mouthing the southern states, and you're raving about. Didn't California have
don't mean to be bad mouthing the South
conversion centers?
I'm talking about
investigated
the one that came to mind was a specific person who does come from a and he has when I knew him at least had a thick Southern accent. And then, because it was always like, then ever since I've always thought Southern accent sounded gay, but
I don't know what you're talking about.
Very religious family where his life, his existence is, considered an abomination, and so he left. He left family. He left state. He moved to a place of greater acceptance to take ownership of his own life. And that sort of rite of passage, that sort of ability to accept yourself for who you are, that when somebody doesn't make that choice, turns into a lifetime of sort of self-loathing and running gay rehab clinics or creating laws to ban homosexuality when you yourself in the ultimate equation turn out to be the thing you've been trying to ban. It's sad and inspiring, depending on the outcome of that story.
Well, Pamela also talked about it when she made the comment that people need to, I don't know if it's ignore the government or whatever. Well, that's what's happened with almost all... Sorry, go ahead, Pamela.
Sorry, I was saying, no, I didn't mean ignore them. I don't mean go out and start breaking laws, people. I just mean show them you don't need them. You're not reliant upon them.
And in all these minorities, all the different minorities that we've had in the United States, I mean, for like 300 years, it was the white Christian male that ran America for like 300 years. And finally, when these revolutions happened, it was because people said, I'm not taking this shit anymore, basically. And they stood up for themselves.
Well, that's blatantly racist of you.
Actually, it is. Well, is it racist? The white Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
Okay. Well, if you're going to say Protestant, if you're going to nail it down to a religion, then you can start to counter my racist argument. But it was so I got this friend who's Indian. He's actually sort of Indian. He's sort of Pakistani. He's from the Kush region between India and Pakistan, is where his people originate. So he's like, I'm Indian, but I'm Pakistan. I'm Kush. What? Screw both of them.
Yeah.
But the point is,
he's from California. Yeah.
So yeah, he's also from a farm town in California. So he's got farm boy like accent. It's almost hilarious. But my point to him was that so basically you're Asian. He's like, no, that doesn't make sense. I'm like, you're from the continent of Asia. That makes you Asian. He's like, no, I don't think you can call me Asian. That wouldn't make sense. Nobody would understand that. He's like, because first of all, you got the Russians, and they're all white people. So I'm like, wait a second. Russians are Asians too. You got to call them Asians. He's like, no, they're white people. I'm like, okay, so if a South African moves to the United States, is he not African American? He's like, no. Well then, right? Like, what? So the thing is, it's sort of then I could say, okay, and rebuttal, that would just make you. Couldn't I just say brown people, and include anybody who wasn't whiter or Asian, Oriental Asian? Like, it gets really ridiculous when we're trying to define this because, a minority in the United States at one point meant Irish. And a minority in the United States at one point meant Italian. Now that's just white people, right? But so how is that? How did they meld better? Did they just start speaking English, or did the reason for seeing them as outsiders fade over decades or hundreds of years or whatever it might be? So there's and there was one point when a lot of the people from Scandinavia were moving to the United States newly and were considered the immigrants and were sold good farming land in Minnesota.
Yeah, that's why they're up there now, eh?
Right? So
Canadian for a moment there, eh?
Yeah.
Right. So when we talk about minority as an American in American history, minority has meant just about every people's that you can imagine. There is. I mean, there has been a minority of everybody in the United States at some point in its history.
You know, we talk
for the
about
Protestants.
minorities. I'm using that word, overcoming diversity. War. You had the Irish in the Civil War. Well, I'll tell you what, the one thing the Irish can do is fight. So you had all these Irish companies in both the North and the South fighting against each other, and then they come back home. They come back to New York or whatever, and you know what? Maybe they're not going to be accepted, you know, to be treated the way they were. Although in most of the Irish, it was the women who really pushed them. You have you have African Americans, right? Okay, so now you finally have African Americans accepted in the army, and they go fight for their country, World War II, Vietnam. They come home. They're not going to be put up with being treated as second-class citizens. They're not going to wait. You know, they're going to go marching. I mean, you have Martin Luther King, or the Southern Baptist people in the diner, where they walk into an all-white diner in the South, sit down, they're not moving. And people pour ketchup on their heads, call them names and things. They don't move.
So,
go ahead.
So interesting. That so there are two main areas where unions caught on and protested in California's history. One was Oakland. There was famous. This was the 30s. This was mostly white people, but they joined with black laborers as well. And in Oakland, I mean, there was police being brought in to do violence against the citizens, right? But they still had a complete work stoppage. And Oakland won. The Oakland labor movement won for a while. They outsourced those jobs. Down in Los Angeles, the same sort of activities took place. Yeah. There was booming tire and auto manufacturing and all sorts of things. Labor asserted itself largely in African American communities who were making good blue-collar jobs, making middle-class wages, and it was the companies upped and moved overseas mostly, right? So this is now what is South Central, which is a high crime zone. This is now Oakland, which is a high crime zone in California. This is where we've had decade upon decade of poverty. Oakland, California, South Central California, but these were booming blue-collar job places where there was low crime and, you know, people who were making a good living. So this is a sort of Cesar Chavez, yeah. These are no uvas. I still to this day don't eat any uvas. But this is the consequence of outsourcing. Is you impoverish neighborhoods. You impoverish American neighborhoods when you take lock, stock, and barrel and say that the workers should have no rights.
Yeah, I think the union movement saved America.
It did.
Because otherwise it could have gone into anarchy, could have had two complete classes, a war between the communists and the capitalists. Anything could have happened. Unions saved the country.
At once, and they have been silenced through trade agreements, the union's strongest hope was the Democratic Party, and you've got Clinton, who completely abandoned unions. You got Obama, who's done nothing to help unions. You've eviscerated the strength of the people if a corporation can be an individual, why not a union? Why isn't that collection of people considered an individual with the power to? And the reason is it's harder, I guess, to solicit a donation from thousands of tens of thousandaires than it is from 1 billionaire.
There is a new, more powerful union lurking about that will more and more express itself, and that's the internet. It democratizes everything. That's the new movement, and it's on a global scale. And as long as governments aren't allowed to shut it down or throttle it, if we can keep that open, freedom of speech on a global scale is very, very important. That will be the new union movement 2.0 in many. I think there's many parallels there.
There's many, but the global economy thing is still upsetting to me. Look, every factory that an American company has in China, the workers there don't have OSHA standards for their safety, right?
Right.
They don't have wage protection. They don't get holiday pay. They don't have, if you work this many hours, you're entitled to some benefit of health care contribution by your employer. They can have their cell phones confiscated, monitored. I mean, they're operating their businesses in a communist dictatorship because they're more comfortable there. What the hell does that say about the company? You know, what does that say about a company that says we want actually what we would like, our preferred environment for doing business, where we feel that our interests are best represented, is in a communist dictatorship where the citizen actually has no rights, where the worker can be refused any basic tenet that labor unions fought to instill in the United States, that democracy is demanded. They're undemocratic in nature, in their choices. So that's my big complaint, if I can cycle it back to an earlier conversation. That's my major complaint with the outsourcing and the self-interest of the companies. It's not just the dollar self-interest. That we can all understand, wanting to get a better deal. But when that better deal comes with everything that is America or democracy being pushed aside in favor of a different system where there is not democracy, where there is not civil rights, where there is not worker compensation or worker safety standards, then that's the true nature of the company. And that's what I feel like people just don't identify. We don't identify Nike. We identify Nike with the athletes they've thrown onto the commercials and the just do it and go out there and sweat and work hard and, you know, improve your body and improve your mind. We don't identify them as preferring a communist dictatorship over the United States of America's democratic system. We don't identify them as being in favor of not having worker rights, worker safety, civil rights, but instead favoring a system where those with the most gold make the rules. But we don't identify them as that savage interest that every other aspect of our daily life we would reject wholeheartedly. And that to me is amazing. That disconnect to me is still stunning, even though it's prevalent and pervasive.
Maybe the work going there is the decentralization, and it is the beginning of something positive, where the workers, now that they're getting empowered and they are making that 50 cents per hour or whatever it is, they begin to put pressure on their governments. And with you know, maybe this is the beginning of something. Maybe it's not all downhill.
You know, let me speak to Pamela for a second.
Now we go to Bangladesh. Now we go to Africa. Now we go to Indonesia.
For the United States not being able to spy on its people. We have this, the legislation that allowed that has expired. It's not going to be renewed. And that's thanks to 3 people, Julian Assange, Chelsea Manning, and the guy Snowden, and the internet. Those 3 people defeated, in the long run, the United States government.
Except that Except that
Okay, one of them's in jail. Well.
all right. Yeah, well, the other aspect of that is, you know what the solution they came up with?
Oh.
What? Tell
Is
us.
to let private companies maintain the data as opposed to the government. Like, okay. Oh, so AT&T can maintain all of that data on me as long as they like, and can give it to the government when they see fit if there's a proper writ of whatever, habeas, what's
Hey,
it?
they outsourced it. What can they say?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and where's AT&T's database? You ever talk to an AT&T customer service rep? They're in India.
I
Like,
do not
where
know
is
what
the
you're talking
database? So
about.
it's not in Utah. It's now in Bangladesh. It doesn't... didn't help. It didn't help.
You know, Pamela, if I can talk to you again about, do you have that scrapbook for your daughter that shows when you were part of that movement? Can you maybe your daughter, when she's in school, can write a paper about how her mother was involved in the Occupy movement, etc.?
Oh, I don't have a scrapbook. I don't scrapbook. No, but I mean, my blogs are out there. I still write. She's not going to school. She'll be homeschooled. But yeah, she can write about me if she wants to. What do you mean? I reference myself sometimes in university assignments. So yeah. Are you saying have I saved it all? I haven't particularly saved anything. But it's not past tense. It's still going on. It's just, yeah, constant vigilance. But that's another reason I'm homeschooling. I don't need the government to educate my daughter. I don't need the government to stipulate, that she'll be educated. So she's just got to sit the set exams and that kind of thing to show that I'm teaching her what she's supposed to be learning. But yeah, I don't need to send her to an institution to learn.
I think homeschooling truly is an evil, evil, evil concept.
What?
Said the man with three daughters who have been homeschooled.
Yeah.
It was a joke, tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
All my children are homeschooled.
Yeah, well, that's what I'll be doing too. So, yeah, that's what I'm saying. About just be self-sustaining people. So it's one thing to go out and protest and do the things on the front line, which is great. But if you're not in a position to be able to do that for whatever reason, then just be as self-sustaining as possible, because that's a protest. That's a silent protest. You get your life off the grid. I mean, AT&T can only hold information on you if you're a customer of theirs. Is there a way to get around it? Is there a way to get off the grid? And then, therefore, they can't hold your information in Bangladesh.
I don't know outside the United States, but I'm going to bet technology is going to provide the answer. And you do have monopolies like AT&T, etc. But once again, you have these apps, and people are finding ways of bypassing the system, whatever you want to call it, cutting the cord as far as entertainment. Technology is providing the answer increasingly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're on a trajectory, I think, that it's unstoppable. As long as we can avoid any major collapses in the next 20 to 30 years, I really think technology is on a trajectory that can't be stopped, and it'll be a positive thing. I don't see a negative outcome if we can make it past these next 20, 30 years. I think it started with the internet, and I believe in human beings. I really do. And, with all of our faults and everything else, and as things become more ubiquitous and plentiful for everyone, because of technology, the trajectory is going to go off the scale into a positive way, because people are more apt to share when things are plentiful.
So I've got something for show and tell for you guys. It's a coffee cup, but it's not just any coffee cup. It's a coffee cup for the CIA. Now
we knew it all the time, Richard.
Yeah, well, my brother
spying on us.
Yeah, my brother did some electronics work for the CIA, and so at their gift shop he got their coffee mug. But get a load of this. That's not the funny part. I don't think you'll quite be able to read it, but down on the bottom is the country of manufacture.
China.
China.
Yeah.
Made in China. But it's just regular ceramic. It's not actually China.
My understanding.
Oh, there. I'm better now.
My understanding, the jobs are coming back to the U.S. again. I read a few articles that the jobs are coming back in droves. Unfortunately, it's coming back. They found a cheaper way than paying somebody 50 cents. It's coming back to robotics and automation where possible. So now they don't have to ship things back and forth, but wherever it is possible with the current technology, you have robots creating these things here, and now you avoid all the shipping costs, right? And it's done on the mainland.
You have moved right into one. Hi, Jani.
Hello, Jani.
You moved right into another one of the topics I wanted to talk about, which is automation, which is AI robots and its impact on the workforce. Now, no one knows what the future is going to hold, obviously. But again, having faith in humans, I believe that there will be a large number of jobs. There'll be more jobs created through advances in technology. You will see a reduction. You will possibly see a reduction in the unemployment rate. Well, what it comes down to is training. The jobs that are going to be created over the next 5, 10, 20 years are going to require technical training. The jobs, you know, the factory worker, the manual labor jobs, the person who's working in the factory, you know, sewing or whatever, those jobs are going away very quickly. There are many jobs being created, but they require technical training. And it's that training that isn't happening quickly enough. And I've got one question for each of you. Do you think 90% of the people in the world are capable of being trained to perform those new technical jobs that will be in place in 10, 15 years? Because if they're not, we're in big trouble. Dale, you've cleaned your screen, you've cleaned your mind, and I can't hear a word you're saying because you've muted your microphone.
Okay.
So much for technical training there, Dale.
Case point. Yes.
Yeah, very true. So I don't think I worry about the short-term future, and that's exactly my worry. Is I don't think people can handle a level of technical ability out there, ubiquitous through every country. I don't think they can, and I think how we will do it is through, I think artificial intelligence is going to get much, much stronger. 5 years from now, when we're doing a podcast like this or a Hangout, we're going to have a much different opinion of what AI is. And it's not going to be superhuman, but it's going to do more for us, a lot more. And I worry about that because, you know, where will the people work? And I don't know how we're going to land on our feet. I think medium and long term we're going to be fine. I think there's, along with the production of goods and being produced massively, like we produce cell phones, and everybody in you know, these different African countries, you know, they all have cell phones. They have more, like Kurzweil, you know, made a comment. Some of the, you know, impoverished Africans that didn't have very much money, with the cell phone, they have more knowledge and power than the President of the United States did back in the 1998. So I worry about the short term, about getting there as Google car technology replaces our truck fleet and our drivers and all this other stuff. But then long term, I think there's going to be a beneficial effect. How do we just get to that next step? And I always worry about that.
Yeah.
Richard, how concerned are you? Are you concerned?
About what?
About our ability to migrate from manual labor jobs
right.
to the kind of jobs that are going to be available in the future involving technical training.
Yeah, well, yeah, the educational system in the country has gone down the tubes, and we have Republicans in, I think it's Idaho or Montana, that want to use the Bible to teach astronomy and biology and geology. It's Idaho. I was just going through the Google News over there. I don't know. There's already a huge brain drain from India and Russia and large sections to go to Europe and America to find the jobs, and good on you, I guess. It might lead to a little extra diversity here. I think maybe it wouldn't be a bad thing. I mean, I used to live in South Florida and in Miami, Coral Gables specifically, and a lot of people complain about the Cubans, Cubans that. No, the Cubans were a shot in the arm to Florida's economy. They've been nothing but great. Yeah, there were some Marilitos. In the Marilitos, there were some criminal elements that were sent over here. They emptied out their prisons, but we rounded them up pretty much. They eventually did bad things and got caught here. So we inherited that, but we also inherited a lot of good, hardworking people. And yeah, we got Marco Rubio too.
Okay, Justin, what do you think in terms of? Do you think 90% of the people in the world could learn to do the kind of technical jobs that are going to be available in 20 years, and will they? Or are we headed for a problem?
Both. Yes to both. Yes to both. 90% of the people will be able to handle the technical jobs that are left in the future, and the problem is they don't have to be here, right? I mean, automation itself has eliminated. I mean, what's the point of automation? The point of automation is to do the job that humans used to do through a machine, and the only point at which it makes sense to invest in the automated machine is if it replaces more payroll with more efficiency. So if you have an efficient machine that can do the work that 10 people and 10 people's payroll used to do, and you have to have one technician to monitor it or repair it, then you make that automation choice. More and more and more, we think of certain positions as still being immune somehow to manufacturing. We don't need manual labor. We don't need somebody to go out there and put the widgets on, because the robot arm now can put the widgets on, do the widget thing, and do it quicker and make the weld faster. And you see it in auto industry. There's robots doing welds and spot welds, where there used to be a guy who'd put down the visor and his lead vest and go in there and tack weld stuff. Now a robot arm does it. Robot arm wouldn't do it if it wasn't replacing 2 or 3 payrolls, right? So automation means doing things cheaper, doing things with less humans having to be involved. I think to an extent Dale may feel immune to this. To an extent, Dale, there's not going to be a robot invented in the near future that climbs the tower and makes that repair. One of the things I say to my coworkers in the auto sales business all the time, when they complain about how complicated it is with all the different things, people get information on pricing, and there's so many options, and there's so much, and then there's this, that, whatever it is they complain about, I always point out, if it wasn't complicated, if it wasn't that we had to involve human interaction and leading somebody through this stupidly complex process of getting a loan, selecting a vehicle, all the options of other automated, we wouldn't have a job. If it was something that could be automated, it would be. And therefore, we would not be needed anymore. So I point out, the more complicated your job is, the more humanly involved, either in a physical activity like climbing a specific tower and making a specific repair based on specific training, or just being able to talk humans through a process, the more secure you are. And there's elements of our economy that have felt secure. You know, like, well, you'll always need somebody, you know, go to your local banker for the loan, or go to your local tax guy or your accountant. Well, you can have your taxes done in Bangladesh online. You know, I mean, so the thing with automation is, it only makes sense if you're one of those 1%ers with a big company where you can replace a lot of people down the chain with this automation. And the more you do that, the more it improves the profit of the company, the more it improves the profit of a few individuals at top. Not that I'm against that. If you also have a sort of, here's the word, socialist view on what your society is doing. You know, the vision of the 50s was one day we'd have all of the household appliances would be automated, the flying cars would fly themselves, you wouldn't even need to drive. You know, robots would somehow take more of the labor off of us, more of that daily grind away from us. The fact of the matter is, it's those that control that automation that see the profit. That the person who invested in the first machine that self-folded envelopes and made envelopes by a robotic machinery saw the profit in that.
I want to give a different point of view on that. So imagine, the reason a company's successful is because they can create a product at lower cost that has higher value than their competitors. And each iteration of a product that does something for us, it gets cheaper and cheaper to produce. We get closer and closer to zero marginal cost. Because for companies to keep succeeding, they have to outdo each other.
Yeah. At the same time, though, the way in which you succeed through automation is largely eliminating the middleman between the product being manufactured and the consumer, which is eliminating more and more of the workers. So if at the same time you aren't creating a socialistic society with free education for re-education or first education, whichever the case may be, the more you're doing this at the same time, you're not creating safety nets for health care, safety nets for unemployment. If you're going in one of those directions, if you're going in automation and efficiency and reducing your workforce, at the same time you're eliminating those programs, you're creating a recipe of Oakland and South Central Los Angeles where people in a society look left and right and find no jobs and find nothing else but crime to turn to in order to survive for their families, because their self-interest is still going to be key. If you prioritize education, as a for instance, if you fund the arts, you know what, I mean, the best case scenario for the fully efficient business sector where everything is automated and there's as few workers as possible in that system is to fund the arts, right? Fund the arts through your taxes, which is, of course, what would be necessary, so that you can have people who aren't contributing to manufacturing, who are creating art, whether it's paintings or music or whatever it is, that would come through taxation of a government to support the livelihood of people to pursue something other than business and manufacturing, because you've essentially eliminated your workforce. When you eliminate your workforce, you have people without jobs. You have poor people. This is the scenario. So if we're going to head in that direction, we have to become more socialistic in every other endeavor. If you cut taxes for those who are making more efficient work, continue to cut taxes and create less of a contribution from those who are funneling down the efficiency of business to eliminate the workforce, what do you have? You have one class of people who have money and one class who does not. And the class that does not grows and grows and grows the more efficient you make those businesses. I'm not against the efficiency of business. I'm just saying if at the same time you lessen the contribution from those getting the efficient dollar, then you end up with where we're headed in the United States. You end up with this massive inequality in income distribution.
Go ahead, Dale. Go ahead.
So I totally agree, and I have the same concerns short term with where the worker is going to work. But I think we are ultimately headed to a place of precision automation. It's so ubiquitous and it's so covering that the cost drops so much it almost is zero. And really where we're headed to is a place where you don't need to work at all. You're going to have to do a bare minimum to survive. When we start to look at technologies 50 years down the road where they're printing houses, or biology where advanced techniques that they can mass produce pharmaceuticals and print pharmaceuticals, I think eventually, I worry short term, just like you do, about all these jobs and all these good people. How are we going to survive in the short term? But I think ultimately in the long term, we're headed to a place of zero marginal cost where essentially you have a Star Trek environment where everything is free and the only mode of exchange is art.
Okay, but the counter to that, the little counter to that I would put is the access to money in the now version of it is becoming more and more limited, which is why those few banks offering credit can offer it at 24%, the like legal maximum, and people will bite. It's the reason when you buy a house in the United States, over your 30 years, you end up buying the house twice over because of the interest charged by the banks. It gets to a point where your access to money is something that you have to double down on. Your access to education, I mean, your crime of wanting to become a doctor can cost you $300,000 in student loans. I mean, how criminal is that to be charged $300,000? Largely, that profit can even perhaps go to the government.
But that's
government funded.
The reason the student loans are so expensive is because of government.
Well, that's part of it, but it's also more and more being privatized. There's privatized profits and this is the idea is like we'll make it more efficient by making it profitable to the private sector, but this is not the case though. Whenever this happens, the interest rates actually go up and your ability to not repay because of whatever default is eliminated. So my point though is, and this is one of the things that this is one of my motivations for a Science Island is, as the distribution of wealth becomes more and more one-sided, or 0.1% sided in the United States, real estate is only truly ownable by that percentage. And in the same method in which they would like to maximize profits and find pain thresholds through consumer debt or consumer spending or whatever it is, or efficiency within the business, so is the maximization of profits from real estate. This is what brought down many of the big banks, is trying to maximize these profits. And people just simply said, forget it. I'd rather just eliminate my financial ability to borrow money than to continue to pay because I couldn't. So my point is, like the desire for a Science Island where the land is already paid for, I don't care if it's a cabin or a yurt, but you don't have that overhead, it would free you up to get closer to that zero-sum society. Absolutely. But between there and where we are now as a society and that ultimate goal, the exploitation of ownership of everything through all the exploitive things in the past and all the efficiencies of automation are going to create a society where less than 1%, it's already, I mean, we're at the point already, 1% of society owns, no, it's not even 1%, it's like 0.1% of the American economy is held, 90% of the American economy is held by 0.1% of the individuals in it. more than 80%, you mentioned stocks before, more than 80% of the stock market is owned by that 0.1%. So you've got a couple nickels in there. Dale, you got a couple nickels in that.
Yeah.
But
they're gold.
But 0.1% of society in the United States owns 80% of that wealth. So when we talk about the stock market went up, the stock market went down, you lost a couple grand, you gained a couple grand, it's really the pulse of a 0.1%. Our GDP has nothing to do with the standard of living in this country. Nothing whatsoever to do with it. It's completely divorced from somebody's ability to pay their rent in this country, which is ridiculous. So that's one of the desires for the Science Island, is that if you did start from a playing field of not having to pay further rent and getting out from under that, and being able to exercise your energy towards building, working, doing whatever, you're already way ahead of, you're much closer to that ultimate goal of, yeah, we need to live in a slightly socialized society where we can make all of our own stuff, where we don't need to rely on a whole lot of goods from somewhere else. We don't need to rely on a paycheck from the boss. We can actually make it ourselves, download it, and have it printed ourselves. There's that vision. There is that possibility out there that could be a real future for humanity. But you know as well as I, most of humanity has done nothing to actually create that for themselves. Most of society is paying twice what the inflated market value of their home was, because that's the only option. Like, I have to buy a t-shirt made from slave labor. You have to pay twice the inflated value of your house. The house payments have gone up. I mean, housing prices have gone up. They've doubled in 10 years, where income hasn't moved at all. I mean, there's some ridiculous trends taking place. The fact that everybody doesn't grab an axe handle out of the trunk of their car and go marching on their local government and smashing windows is just people are placated. I don't know, maybe the television shows are too good to miss this week. I don't know what it is.
Any comment, Pamela? I don't know if you got your jacket on, you're going to go outside, or you're just getting warm, but
no, it's cold. Yeah, it's getting, so I was getting cold, so I put my jacket on.
How concerned at all are you for Chelsea's future, Chelsea's ability to get a job?
No, she'll be self-sustained. She'll be fine.
Okay.
She'll always work for herself. I don't plan on training her to be a worker, ant, bee, whatever. No. Yeah. So no, she'll be fine. I mean, I work for myself. Her dad works for himself. But not everyone has that opportunity. Not everyone has the education to do that or the motivation to do that, you know. So, yeah. No, she'll be fine. She'll be able to go and live in the desert if she had to. And survive.
Wait, Pamela, how much do you owe in student loans right now? Can you add it up for us? Is it even possible on a ledger off the top of your head? Do you need a calculator?
Carry the one. No. No. Oh no. Okay. So yeah. No. I don't have to worry. No. Well, you have what's it called now? Fee help or something. But until I'm earning, I think, which I was before, but I'm not now because I'm a stay-at-home mum. I think I have to earn about $50,000 a year, and then 2% of my pay above $50,000 a year goes towards paying back like what I would have owed. So all up, I probably owe about maybe $60,000, but I've done like 5 degrees or something. So yeah.
So you do live in a society that values your education and what you can benefit, how you can benefit society based on being educated.
Yeah.
Dale,
and if I die, it doesn't come out of my estate. Sorry, what's that, Ed?
No, go ahead. I was going to ask Dale whether they have student loans in Canada. Is it a problem there?
You have the same kind of thing as Australia, don't you?
Yeah, we have student loans. And I find student loans, the point of them was to educate more people and kind of move the economy along. I think they did more damage than good, though, because in my estimate, when you artificially, when the government makes easy money available to the masses, people take that money, and now all of a sudden you have a large distribution of loans to students that are now eligible to go in and get some classes at a university or a college. The problem with that is if I'm running a college and I know that all these kids are getting money, there's now competition for those classes. And so I'm going to up my rates, I'm going to hire more people, and I will make education more expensive as a result of all this money being injected into the system. And I think there's, although government was trying to do the right thing, I think in many, not all cases, but in many cases, they did more damage because now the cost of an education has gone through the roof. At least it has here. And the government.
Sorry, I was going to say, to do a 6-year medical surgical degree is just under $100,000. Whereas it's, what, 300,000 you were saying?
Yeah.
That's 100,000 Australian compared to US 300,000, which is like, I don't know, 350, 400,000 here. That's ridiculous, yeah.
You know, I see government's best intentions. Like I think the governments around the world had the best intentions, but I believe there is this byproduct of, okay, hey, all this money's in the system, let's raise the rates.
Well, okay, so part of it too is, though, there's something called Pell Grants. There's money that the government does give to people who are pursuing an education that it just gives them, and the party, the GOP has been attempting to eliminate those for years. Yeah. And the reason they want to eliminate the free money from the government is because they want you to go into private loans to benefit banks, so the banks profit from it. It's become a profit center.
Pamela, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was
That's why I say don't pay back the student loans. Nobody should ever pay back a student loan. You're just feeding the beast.
Well, I was just going to say, if you do your medical degree here in Australia anyway for less than 100,000, and you don't pay any of it back until you earn over 50,000 a year, if you work in a rural setting, and I mean like 91% of Australia is considered rural.
Sheep station.
Then you get it wiped clean if you work there for 6 years, I think. So where I'm living right now, which is like a little mini city, is considered rural. If you just work outside of the capital cities for 6 years, you don't pay any of it back.
Sweet.
Yeah. So that hasn't.
The only problem with that, it creates cities full of uneducated people.
No, you can go there afterwards.
Nobody with student loans lives in the city.
You can go there right away and just have to pay it back. But if you're a doctor, you're earning $300,000 $350,000 a year anyway. It's not that big a deal to pay back if you have to.
Yeah.
You have a. Yeah. So, they have tried to put the prices up here, and everyone just protests, and it's all good. Yeah. So maybe the Canadians didn't protest enough, Dale.
I guess
By the way, today's episode was brought to you by the number 4.
Yeah, we bought some numbers this morning. What else we got here? Yeah, numbers and letters.
Go ahead, Dale. You've got a storm coming, you say, so you might have to pop out soon.
Oh.
Yeah, the thunderous. Did you hear that?
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
Good timing.
It's getting pretty nasty. The wind's picking up, and so if I suddenly lose the connection, it's probably because the power went out.
It's Odin's will.
No, it's Thor. Can't you tell? Yeah.
Yeah, something's coming through really good. Glad I'm not climbing.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is actually a good question, Dale, because it seems like your skill set would likely show up as being most handy during a storm. Like a lightning strike on a tower could take out electrical equipment, and therefore that's when the broadcast would be lost. And it being an emergency storm situation, they would want to keep the broadcast going for emergency information to be relayed. Is there? I mean, when it's the weather conditions you've got now, is there just no tower climbing that takes place?
Right.
Or do they send like the newest guy on the tower climbing team up the tower that day?
We send the newest guy, of course. You know? That's very common practice. So, and if he survives, then he's in. He becomes a veteran. If he doesn't, then it's his own shit-ass luck. So. Yeah, all good fun.
So is it like that? It goes down a call list from the newest down to the. But I mean, how new do you have to be to know not to answer the phone that night?
You know, if I told you some of the things I've done in my past, like tower climbing is actually pretty safe. I've worked on some older transmitters that are, 60,000 watts. And with that kind of wattage, with really, really high voltage, if you're not being very, very safe, it'll jump across the room and it will go through your body and go to ground if you don't know what you're doing. So, and the other thing too is, like, a lot of these small chambers where you're coaxing electrons up a waveguide medium into a tower, it produces, some of the older transmitters, it produces X-rays and all sorts of nasty stuff. So if you don't, and it's funny, we've had so many cutbacks in media, right, where we've actually called other media organizations saying, yeah, we know you've cut back, and if you have any transmission issues that you're worried about your safety, please call us and we'll try to help you out, right? Because there just isn't the same large pool of technicians around there once was that have the knowledge. But you're right, yeah, it's sometimes you got young kids that are just out of school and don't know any better, and they're doing just simple, silly things that the average person would get. But a lot of kids, when they're fresh out of school, degree or no degree, they make mistakes. They make those amateur mistakes. Wow.
That was a good one.
Smokes!
It's nasty out there.
Yeah, Thor is really smacking that anvil hard. Jeez.
I had a.
Oh yeah.
I'm trying to give you a view of it. Can you see it? No, probably not.
Oh, we can see the door.
Wait.
Yeah.
I see. Is that a UFO?
Oh, there it goes.
That's right above you.
Well, you can count 1001, 1002, and sound travels about
close it is.
a mile and 5 seconds every 1001, 1002, 1003.
I put that at 6
That's
miles.
That's a mile away. 5 seconds is 1 mile, if I recall.
Oh, is that how it works? Okay.
And so that was at 4 seconds.
I thought it was a second a mile. Is that?
Whoa.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Oh! Oh! Wow!
We're getting quite the tour, Dale.
Holy shit.
Okay, see that? Holy shit equals 2 seconds, I think.
It's coming down like you wouldn't believe.
How far are you from your house? How far do you have to go to get into your house?
About 5 feet. I'm going.
That's right on top of you. That was right. That hit your house.
might be time to sign off here. We don't want to see Dale getting electrocuted as the next special on our TWIS Minion show.
But we also don't want him to leave that structure right now. There's
Yeah, right.
Go outside.
You know, it reminded me. I had my Irish Catholic, typical Irish Catholic aunt who had St. Vitus dance, extremely nervous. If she saw or heard one lightning bolt, she would literally dive across the room and grab every plug and just tear them out of the wall.
Oh yeah. Well, you should unplug your TV and pull the antenna if you've got one of those still, and unplug your microwave as well, because that, you know, they're pretty fragile. But yeah, I'm just pulling up Wikipedia.
Get inside. Where are you going? Get in. What?
Yeah, I just checked in Wikipedia, and it agrees 1 mile for every 5 seconds.
Wow.
So, don't you guys have safety switches? We have switches in our homes. They're compulsory. That I think it's like 1/10 of a heartbeat. They turn everything off.
Oh yeah, we have circuit breakers and uninterruptible power supplies and all sorts of stuff there too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're not perfect.
I had a UPS. I think in Cyclone Larry or no, it was Yazi, Cyclone Yazi, and it just blew up. So everything attached to it was fine, but it went.
Yeah, but they're fast in their clamp time, but they're not perfect, and so there's a period of time there of a couple of milliseconds where the amperage does get through, and it can eat your TV set in the meantime. And if it comes in the antenna, well, you know, if you got an antenna on your roof like I do, yeah, you want to definitely pull the plug.
Okay, Dale, Jani has a good idea. You can run out there with an umbrella or something, and the lightning will come down, and then you can use that to charge your batteries.
I'm going to go out and check on some stuff. We might be getting flooded. Looks like a flash flood almost. So.
Hey, yeah, better tend to that.
Flooding is not nice. Actually, he's going through the safety routine right now. Wow.
I have everything that I don't want water damaged in my life in dry bags. So I'm ready for a flood at any time. Everything will just float.
I live on a hill. If we get flooded, you guys are all in trouble. Somebody's in that ark if we get flooded where I live. So not so nice in the wintertime when you have to sled down the icy roads, but great protection from floods.
Flooding houses.
I've got the U.S. radar, but I don't have Canadian.
Yeah, I don't think Dale needs a weather report to tell him he's having a storm right now. But I tell you, that's another advance. And it isn't just the GPS devices; it's the internet, people talking to each other.
Yep. Oh yeah, it's the digital, doing things digitally and via the internet really changes everything. It does level the playing field and yeah, just like Jason was saying earlier that the guys in the middle of Africa have, with a smartphone, have got access to the world's information base. Maybe a little slow, but they got access to it that we just didn't have 20 years ago. And the reason for that's quite simple, because it's a whole lot easier to put up a cell phone tower, satellite-fed cell phone tower, than it is to run phone lines, hunt for hundreds and hundreds of miles. So just one cell phone tower could serve a whole town. It's great.
Yeah, that's what they've got in Bali. I've got a friend living there now, and his internet's slower than mine, but he's not paying $1 a month for it. you just buy your equipment and you access it. It's just everyone has it.
Yeah, and you talk about the change in technology, as you mentioned, Richard. You have the traffic report on the TV station or the radio. People don't use that anymore. They've got these apps that tell them exactly what's happening. 2 miles down the road, is there an accident? How long? And they don't rely on media anymore. They rely on that cell phone, on that smartphone app.
Well, I've been through several cyclones, and I rely on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone says their location and what's happening exactly at their location, so you know where it's flooding, you know where you can get out if you need to, you know where there's no electricity, you know where your friends, that they might not be able to access. Twitter is where it's at. I don't
Yeah, I'm screen sharing now, and there you can see I'm circling Saskatoon, and there's that stripe of orange. That's the storm that you're having now.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you, Richard, in 5 minutes were able to find something and post it. There's your storm. Of course, Dale can see it, but...
Yeah, Dale knows that it's happening. Of course, it's very narrow, and all the energy is concentrated in that one little narrow strip.
Wow.
And when it blows through, it'll be nice afterwards.
Dale has also experienced a slight limitation of the Internet. It can't provide him with a towel. You talk about storms. The worst storm, the worst storm I was in when I was a troop transport on the Pacific Ocean going from Hawaii to Japan. But that aside, on land, I was in a hurricane. Well, I guess it's a typhoon, Japan, and I couldn't fall over. I couldn't fall over. You walk outside and the wind just holds you up. I literally could go like that. The wind held me up.
I used to do that on the aircraft carrier.
Okay, everybody, let's take the pool. How long will it be before Dale gets electrocuted?
I think it's already happened, and he's one of those rare humans that's just immune to the effects.
I'm not dead yet.
Immune.
I'm not dead yet.
This reminds me of an evening I spent on the island of Bornholm, which is, I think, Bornholm is a little Danish-owned island north of Poland, I believe, out in the Black Sea. And it was a crazy lightning-filled thing, and I was wandering through this it's a tiny island, but I'm walking through the forest, heading over to the beach so I can get a better look at this incredible lightning storm that's passing over. And it's pointed out to me that this is probably a really bad idea. But I persisted in wanting to get the view over the jeopardy I was putting myself in. And it was incredible, because I'm looking out over sea and lightning striking like and eventually it did occur to me that I am this small electrical conduit on the surface of a planet, and I should probably go indoors and be grounded somewhat. But it's tough. It's tough when you're out in wilderness with lightning not to be attracted to the spectacle of it.
Well, oh gosh, sorry. I unmuted. I was watching, I don't know, some documentary a million years ago before I had my belly pierced, and some people who have been struck by lightning survived because of their belly piercing. The electrical current went out where the metal was and didn't go through their entire body. So I got my belly pierced after that. so I should be fine. That was about 13 years ago. So if I get struck by lightning, I'll be fine.
Actually, the worst flooding I was in is one of the worst flooding in the United States, 1955. We got hit by 2 hurricanes, one after the other. And I forget how many people actually died, but there was like little brooks that became raging torrents. We had a boat tied up to our parking, where our parking lot was, parking garage was. I don't know if I can screen share a YouTube video.
Sure, I did a little while ago. Some crazy guy climbing a tower on a certain Hangout show. Yeah.
Come on. There we go. Can't see a good picture of it, but I mean, there you're talking about probably. That's a factory.
Was.
Actually, you're right. Was a factory. It's not a factory anymore. It's an abandoned building. And this is actually, that's not too bad compared to how bad it got. You get an idea. And that's just a small creek, basically. That's not a raging river originally.
Right. Not supposed to be.
Town. There you go. Middle of town is just completely wiped out.
Where is Seymour? What state?
Connecticut. Seymour is in what's called the valley part of Connecticut. And actually, it's Justin talked about, it's one of those towns that relied on the factories. And now, factory's gone. And it's not in such great state. We've lost 5,000 in population, I think, over the last 4 or 5 years. People leaving.
Well, hey, maybe that's good. Maybe we should move Science Island there.
Yeah, cheap land.
Yeah.
That'd be 3 houses.
3 houses you've lived in. A tree house. Yeah. Building a tree house. I got you. There are some really... you're talking about Science Island and what kind of buildings to put up. There's just bucket loads of options. That's not even a problem. Finding a good house, a tiny home, a tree home, whatever it happens to be.
There's your Seymour flood, 1955.
Yeah. I know that the river, what was the river, what became the raging torrent, I know that just outside the home, my home, father's home, a couple of cops got washed away trying to rescue someone. That's where they called it the valley. But I happen to live up on the hill. One thing they did after that, and it's the Naugatuck River, they put in flood control, and it has helped. We still do get flooding, but nothing like that. And in that case, as I say, it was 2 hurricanes, one hitting right after the other. Army Corps engineers, they did a pretty good job of flood control. Maybe not so well in New Orleans, but I'm looking at Dale's garage. I mean, you notice he's got stuff now hanging from the ceiling. Has to get it off the floor. Where he lives, it's surrounded. I don't know if it's surrounded by a river or not, but it's surrounded by a body of water, and there are 3 fairly large bridges across it. So you could definitely have a flooding problem.
They got 3 houses.
Ah, cinder cone there. I saw that video just today.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing. Hello?
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing the options. We talked about skills. If you have skills like that, or maybe one or two people with skills like that, you can build almost anything. Getting plans from the internet.
All right. Where is Preston, New London County?
Preston is north, kind of more north, country.
Okay. Apparently there's 99 acres, but it says bank owned. Really nice park with 2 pools and a baseball field. 99 acres for $54,000.
Oh, you can get land dirt cheap here if you want it.
Boy.
Most of what I'm looking at, actually, the land does not seem cheap. Most of the land that's just land for sale is in the millions for under 100 acres. There's New London seems to be the spot, though. Must be wretched territory, but 80.5 acres for $200,000.
Oh, London is right on the water. There was a submarine base there. I don't think it's there anymore, but that used to be a big submarine base. Probably half of those people are now working in the India casinos.
76 acres for $200,000. That's in Plainfield, Windham County.
It's hit or miss, and any of the good, cheap land has been taken. Because we're right near New York.
Litchfield. I don't know where Litchfield is. It sounds uninviting, but it's expensive.
Country.
As can be.
Well, when I say, country, you think of people, country people. But it's more like the 1% country people.
Right.
The millionaires walking around in their lumberjack outfits, although Litchfield is...
Litchfield's west of Hartford.
Yeah, it's not really that rich of a... Actually, insurance. Maybe that's the insurance people live there.
Here's 66 acres. Half is in roughly half is in Woodstock, Connecticut, and the other half is in Southbridge, Massachusetts.
Yeah, right on the border.
$149,000 for 66 acres.
You have to like winter. That's the first thing. You gotta like winter.
I'm missing winter. I didn't get one. I keep feeling like fall is about to arrive, and this is this really bizarre thing I've been talking about for a while. I keep feeling like it's going to start. Summer's about to start here. We didn't have fall or winter in California this year. We had summer and spring alternately, off and on, throughout the spring, the fall and winter. Spring felt like summer. Now summer's about to start, and it's already we were 102 degrees a couple days ago.
Wow.
And then it rained and we had thunder and lightning, and it knocked it down to like the 80s. But it's been hot and miserable in the Central Valley.
That's hotter than here. Here it's been in the 80s, might have snuck up into the 90s, but it hasn't made it up to 100. I don't remember the last time it was over 100 here in Connecticut.
Well, I'm done with the heat, at least for this year. And summer's about to start.
Send it to Pamela. Send it to Pamela.
I'm sick of winter, and after this, I'm going to the Northern Hemisphere again and having another winter.
So lucky.
No.
Yeah, la-di-da-di-da. La-di-da-di-da.
Yeah. I should be back for the end of cyclone season. Yeah.
Where in Europe you're going again?
It hasn't been confirmed yet. I'll find out this month, but should be going to France.
France.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been to France, but this is a different part of France. I haven't been to this part of France. I've been to the other side.
Southern and northern. Northern part can get cold. They got some mountains up there.
Yeah, we've been to the French Alps. Yep. Yeah, this is, I think, Western France. Yeah. I mean, France isn't that big. Well, not for me anyway. No, don't pull the cables. I'll be back.
So Pamela, you weren't where the Vikings, Justin's Vikings, invaded.
I'm not sure.
Ragnar,
I don't know.
is that the guy's name? Ragnar something or other?
I thought we were going to become Vikings and go and invade. I thought that was the plan. I'm ready. Let's go.
Well, Chelsea's got Viking blood. Perhaps she's got the red hair.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, she's all Viking. Aren't she?
Da?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah?
Da. She said da.
Yeah?
Are you a Viking? Yeah. Yeah.
How many intelligent words is she? How many words is she speaking that you can understand?
I understood that. No, she says them here and there. Like the other day, she grabbed my big toe and she said toes, and I said yeah. So she was happy with that. You know, she says mum and mummy, and she says dada, but basically most men she calls dada. What else? I don't know. Few just bits here and there. Yeah, she has not really talking yet, but she is running, and she's at the running away from me stage. So I went to a different park today because the park we normally go to is all fenced in, and so you can let them run free. But this one was in a different area. Went to a different park, and yeah, I don't want to do that again because I had to run fast.
She's also now into reaching for stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she's been on that for ages. Yeah. No, she's 24/7. Just, well, except when she's asleep, and that's the only time I get things done, which is why I only get about 4 hours a night, because half of the sleeping time is sleeping, and the other half I have to do stuff. That's when I get things done.
Well, she has the right chromosomes, because I read an article in the New York Times that said there are hundreds of thousands of people in the United States, over 100. 95% of them are women.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Good. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, she'll live till over 100. She's very healthy. She was crying the other day. I'm selling off all my stuff, well, not all my stuff, but most of my stuff, just having a big cull. And this woman came around to buy some stuff, and Chelsea just cried the entire time she was here for whatever reason. She didn't like her, and this woman wouldn't go home. I couldn't get rid of her. Anyway, she bought stuff. It was good, but she's saying, oh, maybe she's coming down with something, and I said, no, she's never had a cold. Like, she's not sick. She's never been sick. She's 14 months old and never had anything. So,
how much does she mix with other children? Because children pass colds to each other like crazy.
Yeah, no, she does. There's a little boy next door, a month older than her. They play. Yeah, at the park where we normally go, it's always got heaps of kids. Yeah, no, she mixes with kids. There's kids that live up above us in Cairns, and I get out and socialise with friends and their kids all the time. So, yeah, she does mix. She's just got a really good immune system. She's just never been sick. I was wondering the other day, because one of the things I'm selling off is all my old VHS, and if you can believe it, people are buying VHS. Anyway, that's great. Saves me putting them in the bin. And one of the movies was Unbreakable with Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson. Has anyone seen it?
I must have. It rings a bell.
It's really good. Like, it turns out Bruce Willis is like basically, he's unbreakable. That's what it's about. and he's never had a cold in his life or anything like that. And he's never really put it to the test, but he had to on a couple of occasions, and he sort of becomes a superhero out of it. But I was thinking, maybe she's unbreakable because she just nothing happened, which is good. Yeah.
Well, Dale, you can see your weather radar there. The storm has moved through Saskatoon and is moving off to the east.
Yeah, that's perfect.
It's getting quiet.
It's getting quiet here now for sure, but boy, did it flood quickly.
Are you west of town?
No, I'm on the east side of town, so it would have left me kind of in the last part. So now it's going to hit our transmitter soon.
Oh.
Sorry, that was me.
Well, I should probably go to bed. It's 3:30 a.m. here on the east coast of the U.S. and I see Jani's got sunlight streaming in his window, and Pamela Sue also. Of course, she's all the way on the other side of the bloody globe, but Jani's not that far away.
Yeah, I'm going to call it a night too. It's not as late here, 1:30, but late enough.
Yeah. All right. Good night, everybody.
Okay.
Dang,
that was that. That was quick.
I started something, I'm afraid. I didn't mean to do that.
Right,
That's it. Richard leaves the room. We all go home. I'm sorry. That's it. The night's over.
I know I have a magnetic personality, but no, that's not it.
Well, I should be on time this week. I've got a computer that works now.
Yay!
I got to ask you guys one question.
Sure.
In terms of next week's a whole week away, quite obviously, but I've pushed the start time back to 11:30 p.m. and everybody here showed up at 12 o'clock midnight. Now the only thing difference that makes is when I create the event on Google Plus, I'm telling people what time it will start. And first I had it at 11 o'clock, and maybe people were hanging around, and it didn't start till 11:45. I pushed it back to 11:30. If I pushed it back, is 11:30 fine? Would it make any difference if I pushed it back till 12 o'clock? Would that really help you guys at all? Could you be more confident that you could show up at 12? And that only means I can communicate to everybody else it starts at 12, because it doesn't make a bit of difference to me. Dale.
Yeah, if you push it back a little bit like that, that's kind of the sweet spot for me. And only because like our summers are short, and I was out for a long walk tonight, and so but that local time, it's basically the sun's just going down around 10 p.m. at night, which is your 11, I think. So we kind of enjoy that, but
okay.
Yeah, half an hour makes a difference for me.
Pamela, I don't know if it makes any difference to you. Start time.
No difference to me. I don't mind whenever. As I said, I'm set now. My computer works.
Okay.
All good.
Richard, would it make any difference to you? You're the same time zone as me, so you might even like a shorter.
Yeah, earlier might even be better. I don't know. But tonight I was on at 11:33, starting to click on Windows and trying to figure out how to get in.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't know where Justin is.
I'm here. I'm here somewhere.
If I pushed the start time back another half an hour, which would be maybe 9 o'clock for you, would that be better for you?
Regardless of what the time is, I'll show up a little after because a good entrance is always based on anticipation. and so whatever the time is, I'll probably be 20 to 30 minutes after that. Now, so I work right up to the 11 o'clock Eastern time. So I'm still usually at work when you start anyway. Or and that's if I can get out. So to me it's just a matter of what the workplace demands, and how soon I get here is based on that. So.
Okay, Jani, it's morning for you anyway. You're having breakfast. Earlier, later, make any difference for you?
No. It's just like today. I woke up so late.
Okay. All right, so I'll just push back the start time next week till 12 midnight. I don't even actually know if Google Plus will let me do that, but I'll let everybody know. So next week, whoever can make it, I'm going to push the start time back to midnight, the midnight hour. Christopher Lee passed away. Man, one of the coolest people on the planet. Man. And I want to see him in his cape. I want to see him pop out of the grave in his cape. Okay, guys. See you all next week, or as many of you as can make it.